qualities, the qualifications of people we want in leadership. In one word, to choose leaders of integrity, leaders who will hold their positions knowing they are holding it in trust for the people, leaders who will put the interests of people first, and leaders who will be open, that is transparent and accountable to the people. It means that the duty of choosing those leaders is upon us as citizens and as voters. It's an individual as well as a collective duty. And I think that's where we begin by going wrong. Because if you choose leaders that are not accountable, and I mean leaders at every level, because when we talk of leadership, it's leadership from your ward, your county, and then nationally. Because from the ward and county, you have an MP, member of parliament for the constituency, who is a national leader. You have a women rep, you have a senator, or national leaders. So all those 6 leaders should qualify under the constitution. And I think that since 2010, we have been interpreting the constitution in a convoluted manner that fits us, not the values that are there. If you remember in 2013 election, the then Chief Justice, Willy Mutunga, had said that nobody facing to vie, nobody who did not qualify under Chapter 6. Thereafter, I don't know what happened. And it was business as usual, and everybody, whoever they were, qualified. There was no question. And that is the way we have done. When we have hired people for public office, even competitively, we have been able to manipulate those processes, and we have ended up with people who are not suitable. And I am not saying that everybody appointed, elected, or recruited has been unsuitable, but we have deliberately manipulated and therefore ended with people who would not have qualified. The result is that instead of having a renewal of our republic with the 2010 constitution, we seem to be moving forward and moving backwards. Moving forward where the gains of the constitution can be felt, like the devolution of power and resources, but it's devolution of power and resources minus accountability. And therefore, the benefit that we have gotten from that devolution is less than what we should have gotten. Because the resources, they may here and there show some improvement, but we've also been minting fresh millionaires and billionaires all around. And when there is so much widespread corruption from the county up to the national level, it means that we are killing opportunity for a majority of the people. When a tender is given corruptly, the prices are exaggerated, and we make that millionaire or billionaire. It means that instead of that money circulating and building the economy of that county or even nationally, it's just going to fatten a bank account. It's going maybe somewhere to enrich or transform the life of one person, as opposed to if work was done in a way that is above board, thereby creating employment. If it's a classroom, improving the facilities for education. If it's for a hospital, improving health. And this is what has been happening. So to change the status quo, we need to adhere to the Constitution, not just Chapter 6 and issues of accountability on public finance and management of public affairs, but to look at the purpose. What was the purpose of the Constitution? It was to create a state that works for the benefit of the majority, that looks after the welfare of the majority, a state where all of us will live in dignity, a state where our human rights are respected irrespective of our social status, and a state where we look out for one another as guided by Article 43, where the basic needs of every Kenyan are the business of the state. That the state has to ensure that people get their basic needs. It means if food is too expensive and beyond the reach of a majority, the government has to think of subsidies. The government has also to think of social support. And we have seen social support in the last 10 or 12 years. But that social support has not spread out wide enough to net all the needy. It has not been applied in a way that we can begin to address the needs of shelter for the vulnerable. It has not been applied in a way that education can be accessible to all. The way we are moving now, education is going beyond the reach of the vulnerable. Health is beyond the reach of the vulnerable. So it looks like we are going backwards. We may see a few things that are changing, but it's like one step forward, two steps backwards. And therefore, I want to end my opening remarks there and say that changing the status quo is about adhering to the Constitution, but it's also at a personal level, me and you, choosing to stand by the rule of law. And when you are offered an opportunity to serve, it doesn't matter at what level. You could just be that clerk there issuing ID cards or issuing a passport in the passport office. Give service to your fellow compatriots and to all those who come to you willingly, happily, without expecting anything more than your monthly salary. It means if you're a clerk at the IEBC or a commissioner, be true to your oath of office, respect the Constitution and the laws, and we would never be having the sort of disputes we have after elections. It means if you are in the courts, you do the same. And it also means those of us who were serving before the 2010 Constitution, when things were different, it means relearning and changing our mindset so that we see things through the lens of the 2010 documents. I see courts giving rulings which are supportive of the state at the expense of the fundamental values embodied in Article 10 of the Constitution, favoring those in power against the populace, forgetting that in this dispensation, it is the ordinary Kenyan who collectively holds sovereignty and holds all power, donates that power to the courts, donates that power to parliament, donates that power to the executive as a trust. And that power can be recalled. It is not a title deed where you'll tell somebody that I've been elected for 5 years, you can't touch me. It is a power that can be recalled at any time by people exercising their sovereignty. I want to say this, these are very interesting times. Last year, when we were demonstrating as Azimio, we kept on saying power belongs to the people under Article 1. But I don't think that we had a clarity of mind of how people can exercise power collectively under Article 1. This year, we have experienced and seen people, especially the youthful Gen Zs and their millennial brothers and sisters, exercising their sovereignty. They didn't need to have a formal way of communicating, but through social media, they were able to push and to make a chest thumping president recall the finance bill before he could sign it to be an act of parliament, to become law. It was already an act of parliament, but it had not become law because he had not appended his signature. We have seen him dissolve cabinet. Unfortunately, we have seen him now go back to his comfort zone before adhering to all the other demands. In conclusion, therefore, changing the status quo means that each one of us individually and all of us collectively hold hands and do what is needed to be done. What you are required to do individually, you do it in accordance with the Constitution and our law. What we need to do collectively, we stand collectively. And I feel we still have a job to do. We can't let this moment go. This is a moment to go back to the reset button and to help our country. I think that's all I would like to say for now. And thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. And you highlighted correctly the importance of adhering to the Constitution, as we've seen it being really violated so many times. And talking about Article 1 of the Constitution, there was some discussion that it could be that the Constitution is vague about how then people would implement that if they really want to take back the mandate that they gave. Are you able to chime in on that? Because as so far I know, there's a petition in court at the moment. Just a few words, and then I will open the session to everyone to ask questions. So 2 minutes each. Back to you.
It is true that the Constitution does not expressly tell you what to do. And I do not think there is any law that can provide for everything. And like I've said before, I do not know of any other constitution in the world except the Kenyan Constitution that envisages a revolution by the people using their collective power. And we almost saw it. And I keep on wondering, on the 25th, when there was killing, needless killing of the peaceful protesters, what if the next day, all of us now, not just the Gen Zs, their mothers, their sisters, everybody had come out? Wouldn't we have achieved a change of government? And then what happens? Because we have to You have to look at it and see what happens, because you do not want a situation that would go out of hand and then work against the change that people are looking for. There are many ways. It's not written in the Constitution, but it is possible, I think, of people to recall institutions. And I believe that the numbers that came out at the peak of those demonstrations, I actually believe the executive and parliament stand recalled. And in governments in the West, when there is expression of public displeasure that is so strong as it was in this country, actually the government on its own volition would have resigned to pave way for the elections. And if that had happened, then the law says it is the speaker who would be in charge during that period. But it is still
What's up,
possible
insiders?
for
Today we're
people using their collective voice to give the minimum conditions for such an election. Yes, there is no IBC at the moment, not properly constituted, but it is possible for Kenyans to constitute one, and it can be through formal or informal channels. I have seen the Gen Z vetting those whose name have been put out as cabinet secretaries, and they are doing it very well, better than actually Parliament, the institution that has let Kenyans down repeatedly in vetting. So I would like to hear other thoughts, but there are many ways and tested ways. Just because it hasn't been done doesn't mean it can't be done. I bet last year, if we had said people could exercise their power, or when we were saying it in our meetings, not everybody believed what we were saying. But now we know it's possible. And I know there is a lot of thought going on in different circles on how people can achieve the ultimate. And it includes those who have gone to court to ask for a referendum. But personally, I believe when people are exercising their sovereignty directly, they do not necessarily have to go to a delegated institution. And all the arms of government are delegated institutions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. One last question before I open the floor to everyone. I am of the opinion that the winner takes it all option does not work very well in many African countries. So my opinion is that if we could have a parliamentary type of government, then that would really work more. What is your opinion on that? Can you, sorry, could you kindly unmute?
So,
Yeah.
sorry, I had still muted.
Yeah.
My opinion on that is that if we go back to Article 81 of the Constitution, which talks of us ensuring that the electoral system shall comply with the following principles, where it talks of us having a system that enables several things: representation, gender representation, representation of people with disabilities, universal suffrage, equality of the vote, free and fair elections, and all those other things. I believe that it's not so much about winner takes it all. It's about reviewing our electoral system so that we can be able to conquer all the evils that accompany elections. If we took a proportional representative system, PR, where you elect political parties, not individuals, and then seats are shared in accordance with the number of votes each party gets. That way, you already achieve equality of the vote. It is an easy system to achieve inclusiveness, because for men and women, for the gender, if you alternate the names of men and women, you achieve gender parity or near gender parity. If you then make every fourth, fifth, or 10th a person with disabilities or a minority, it is a system that would help us to get less people into parliament and representative. And the fact that people would not have to campaign, I would not have to campaign to be elected. I'll campaign for my party. It would go a long way in helping us shed off personal competition where corruption comes in, where a candidate has to bribe the voters. If it is my party getting elected, I have no pressure as a person to dish out money. So I would think myself that it's the PR system is accommodative, and it's not the winner takes it all, because you are going to share the seats. You may not share government, but you will share the seats in proportion to the votes each party got. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think that is also what I was referring to. And just to give an example, like in Kenya, we've had two leaders from Germany visit. Scholz, the chancellor, is from the Reds, and the other lady came, Annalena Baerbock, is from the Greens. So that is actually different parties, same country, but sharing the same interest of the people. Okay, so thanks for that. Hillary, kindly say a few words before we now proceed to Farish, Baba Amandla, Liberali, and Duncan in that order. I'll be picking 4 speakers, 2 minutes each. Pose your questions, and then we give Mama a time to respond. Hillary.
Yes, much. Before they come in, good evening, good afternoon. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mamata, for coming and conversing with us today. We're really happy to have you today and share the wisdom. And I think, Maj, you give the direction how we're gonna do it today. And also, remember to follow each other, guys. Remember to connect so that we can connect when we have all these spaces. It is important to get at that point. Otherwise, back to the
Okay,
list. You
thanks.
can go on.
Fabish, go, then Baba Amandla, then Liberal, then Duncan, 2 minutes each.
Thank you so much, Maj, Hilary, and Mama Martha. Thank you so much for attending.
Fabish, are you here?
Yes, I
Yes,
can hear
can you hear
him.
me?
Yeah, I can hear him. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Mama Martha, for coming to this session, at least to enlighten us. You are one of our leaders that we respect so much. You have struggled for this country, and your struggle will not go in vain. We are still here also trying to back up and make our country better. I have a few questions that I'd like to ask. One is about parliament, because we see parliament being an extension of executive. Always since we enacted even this new constitution and even with the older one. How are we going to solve this issue of parliament being an extension of executive? Is it possible that maybe we can make a parliament to be neutral, that when the members of parliament are elected, then when they are sworn in as members of parliament, they denounce their parties and they remain neutral so that they will not be used as extension of executive? Then number 2 is about in this new constitution, we knew that the CS, the ministers, are not supposed to be politicians. But it is difficult because when the person is elected, he has denounced his political party. But was it there a timeline that maybe you are not supposed to belong to any political party for maybe 6 months or 1 year, so that before you are nominated in that position? Question number 3 is about resolving of election disputes, because we see this is a thorn issue in our country. since 2007, where it was bloody, and that issue has never been resolved. And to add also that one, so that Mama Martha, you can at least even clear yourself, because many people have been laying accusation on you that you are the one that helped Kibaki to rig the election of 2007. Maybe you can just come out and clear on that one. Then another one is about this Article 1. How do we exercise Article 1 without being looked as a, anarchy? Because when people exercise it collectively, then we see the regime of the day will say that this is anarchy. They want to disturb the law and order. So I don't know how people suppose how that Article 37 and 37 also, when people demonstrate under Article 37 to go and present the petition. When you want to go and present petition in parliament, you are told that is a protected area. You want to present petition to State House, you are told that is a protected area. So how are people supposed to exercise their Article 37 and present their petitions to these institutions? And the last one is about overrepresentation that we see. Why do we have too much representation? Is it lack of values and trust? Because why would we elect a member of parliament that is supposed to represent everyone in society? Then again, you are told that no, you need a woman representative. Now, my question is, what happened now? For example, now, Mama Martha, by God's grace, tomorrow you become a president, and you decided to choose maybe women ministers. Is that gender parity going to be turned upside down, that now it has to be two-third gender rule on the upside down? Or, for example, a case of like Nakuru County, where all
Fabish,
leaders are women.
Fabish, please. 2 minutes.
Yes, this is the
You're
last
already
one.
in the 4th minute. Yeah, back to you. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, the last one. So that is, I wanted to know about that one, whether is it lack of value and trust. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Mama Martha, is it fine for you if we take 4 speakers, then you note the questions and answer, or do you want to answer after every speaker?
Take maybe 4. I
Okay.
answer.
Okay. Let's go to Baba Amandla, please. 2 minutes each. Let me explain. After 1 minute, I'll carry my hand up. Look at my profile. When you see my hand up, you know you have 1 more minute to go. And really, we want to be strict because we still have more speakers on the line waiting. Baba Amandla, please. Baba Amandla, can you hear me? If not, let's go to Liberali. Yes, kindly proceed. Okay, I cannot hear Liberali. Can anyone hear Liberali? Let's go to Duncan.
No, I can't hear him.
Duncan? Okay. So,
hello.
Yes, please proceed.
Thank you very much, our host and our guest, Mama Martha, for the presentation and for this opportunity. I want to say that I have been one person that has admired the politics of Mama Martha Karua for a very long time. Although we almost lost you to the 2007 controversial election that the speaker before me has alluded to, and I am glad that you will have an opportunity to speak to that. But I think we can still believe in you to be able to steer us and advise this movement on the way forward and how to change the status quo. My name is Dr. Duncan Onyango. I teach at the Technical University of Kenya. And first now, how do we change the status quo? I strongly believe, Honorable Martha, that one of the ways is to ensure that 2027 and a crop, we bring in a significant number of fresh minds into that parliament. How do we get there? Can we sit here hoping that ODM and UDA and these existing old political systems will give fresh minds, people of integrity, chance to get into positions of leadership in 2027? Or what should we do? How do we organize ourselves? Number 2. I strongly
Duncan?
believe that if we are
Duncan, you need to land.
okay,
So, guys,
sorry.
you need to land. Let me please repeat myself. 2 minutes each. So, if there's something already that has been spoken about, let's not repeat ourselves, because then you're taking away your 2 minutes from yourself. Let's just go. If you have a statement to make, try to do it in 1 minute. Then the next minute you ask a question. So, to the speakers who are coming next, please try to structure your speech so that it fits within 2 minutes. I know it's really very restricted, but we have to also consider those who are coming after. Duncan, 1 more minute, and then you close. Back to you. Yeah.
Okay, sorry for that. Sorry for that. Number two, I don't know what Martha would advise us now that ODM has sent its top leadership into government. And they're still claiming to be in opposition. What can be done legally to formally force them to go into government and give fresh room for a new opposition in parliament, so that we don't suffer the consequences of things that happened in times like during the handshake, when we had no serious opposition in parliament? Finally, how do we unify this movement to achieve all these things that we want to achieve? I'm sure even now there are so many spaces all talking about the same thing. And that division, I'm sure, has led us to where we are this far. If we are to continue and achieve meaningful change, how do we bring together all these minds or similar minds and ensure that we are unified, structured, and organized to bring meaningful change in this country? Thank you.
Sorry, I was on mute. Let's go to Kimani, and then Henry, and then Mama Martha is going to answer those first sets of questions. Kimani, 2 minutes each. Kimani cannot hear me. Kimani, can you hear me? Okay, let's go to Henry. Henry?
Hi, how are you?
Fine, thank you.
Thank you so much, Mad, for the opportunity. I appreciate even seeing Martha and the other speakers and listeners. Mine, I'm actually the chairman for Water Bottlers Association of Kenya. I'm so passionate about water, and allow me to start with water. We've been pushing for removal of taxes on water, and we even gave solutions that taxation should be pushed to plastic, because when you put excise duty, which is sin tax, on water, it's like an insult, and you're insulting Kenya, because even actually water is protected under the rights, like Article 43(4)(3)(d). We have a right to access to clean and safe water. So we've been pushing that. We've been giving our suggestion as the public. And one area I thought we also need to strengthen is on the public participation, because the governments have taken this public participation as an academic act, that you just go give your opinion and then you go back and they do what they do. So on water, we were asking government, remove tax on water, because water is not a nice thing. Water is life, and put it on excess on plastic. The other thing on these spaces, we've had challenges on representation of SMEs, because the only thing that will remove the Gen Z from the streets or from the benches is we strengthen the SMEs. We give them incentives so that they can have something and watoke kwa streets. That is the only thing that will stop the maandamano, if I was asked. The last thing is, we've been looking at Kenya. The other people have 100 years plan for Kenya. The other continents, Europe, America, Asia, they have like 100 years plan for Africa. But Africans, we have 0 plans for our life. So let's remember that we need to look at Africa in the future, because there is no way we are pushing our agendas to the other continents. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Let's keep on deliberating. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Henry. And while we are at it, let's, because the Q&A has started, let's also continue sharing the space. And for the next speakers, please, 2 minutes each, and let's stick to the topic, changing the status quo. And with that, I give back the mic to Mama Martha.
Thank you. I'll begin with Fabish. You made a statement which is fairly accurate, that Parliament has become an extension of the executive, and that has gone on for the last, is it 10 years? It's now going to the 13th year, where Parliament appears to have lost its autonomy. I may appear selfish if I say the last Parliament was the 10th Parliament, where we passed the 2010 Constitution. Even though it was a grand coalition government, the backbench exerted itself in many occasions, and that's how we got that document. I do not think that it is by renouncing their parties that Parliament will become assertive. It is by the public using their agency and also utilizing the Constitution to recall their members. You saw when the Gen Z came out, many members even beginning to apologize for voting in total disregard of the wishes of the people. The only thing is that we have to keep this vigilance on a daily basis, because like I said, everybody has gone back to their comfort zone from the executive to Parliament. So we've got a job to do to make holding leaders accountable a daily thing. And that requires information, because we say information is power. And that's how the Gen Z were able to do it, because they have the necessary information. So how do we get information to the people? That's something we must think about. About cabinet secretaries, there's no law that says they should not belong to political parties, but they should not be active politicians. They should not be officials of those parties. The presidential system we adopted in the Constitution, we borrowed largely from the US. And it is not, in that country, the people, they get as CSs, as technocrats. It doesn't mean they are not party members. It just means that they are not active in pursuit of political positions. So there's nothing wrong of, for a CS to belong to a political party silently, but to be a technocrat who is able to serve. In Kenya, we have manipulated that clause, and it started with the Jubilee government appointing politicians who had just missed elections being elected back as cabinet secretaries. I think those are the areas we must hold governments to account and say that we want CSAs who are pure technocrats. If you get somebody who has who wishes to stand in the next elections or to vie for a seat, they'll be working with that in focus, not working for the nation. The other question was about electoral disputes. Electoral disputes can be minimized if we have an electoral commission that is above board. It is not by how many clauses in the Constitution or the law we change, it's the caliber of people we elect, we appoint to those positions. And I've said, although the Constitution provides for competitive process in appointing electoral commissioners and even the staff, we have manipulated this system time and again, and we end up with people who are not suitable. That is the problem we are having. It is possible, it is possible in my view to change this situation if we make everybody account that if you go wrong, you account as a person. An institution is manned by men and women. Let those people account. For instance, we were asking last year that the servers be opened. What we really meant is not just the servers. Let us go through the documents. It is possible to find out where there was wrongdoing by officials of the commission by having a public audit, which is provided for in the constitution. And I believe if 2-3 officials were found guilty of manipulation would end. But now it's like a joke. We just talk of the commission, not the individuals who do the actual thing. Then there's the question about Kibaki and 207. Anybody who is of age and was of age at that time would know that in a tallying center, you don't go with ballot boxes. As an agent, you just go with yourself. I was just as you see me in the mtandao, with my kofia, striped t-shirt, and a skirt. I was not carrying any bag having votes. And I was Kibaki's agent, just like Orengo and anybody else was Raila's agent. We were there to listen and question the IEBC, and eventually they announced the winner. Because even if I tell you, you may not believe it, Fabish, read the Kriegler report made by Judge Kriegler and his fellow commissioners when inquiring in what really went wrong. You will find that votes were exaggerated in the ODM strongholds and in some of the strongholds of PNU. When I say ODM strongholds, it means some of them. Like I can tell you for free that the votes for Chepalungu, then held by Isaac Ruto, were recorded as 337,000 votes for Raila. When I questioned it, because that was more than the population of Chepalungu, the IEBC brought another cheat saying that it was a typographical error and the actual vote was 37,000. It was also found out later that there were areas during the petitions, there were Kibaki areas where also exaggeration took place. How it is alleged that I helped Kibaki rig is still a mystery to me, and I would say it is my brothers who caused post-election violence who would want to wipe their bloody hands off me. The announcement of the winner was made by the commission. And yes, we arranged for Kibaki to be sworn in because his term was ending that day. And we were not going to wait for any other day so that there can be a vacuum. There was no procedure for swearing a president then. And the dispute in counting had stretched it to the 30th. Midnight 30th, there would have been no president. So we did our duty. He was sworn that evening. 5, you can call it 6 because the ceremony stretched past 6. And that is not rigging. And anybody with doubts, read the Kriegler report. I would do the same if it were today. And I not only fought for Kibaki's vote, but for my vote too, because I had voted for him. So I was a willing agent. But my votes were valid votes in Kirinyaga, and what Kiboito announced was what was valid as per the commission. Later, Kriegler was to say that both sides exaggerated the ballot until long. Article 1. When people exercise their power under Article 1, it doesn't mean that there will be bloody sins. If you remember when the Gen Z demonstrated, the first 4 days were so peaceful. It is the 5th day on 25th of June, which turned bloody and chaotic. But it was deliberate acts of the state, hiring goons to come and infiltrate the demonstrations, hiring snipers to shoot peaceful demonstrators. We have seen in other countries demonstrators entering parliament. It is their space, and it so happens very peacefully. If the snipers were not shooting people dead, entry into parliament would have been not so eventful, in the sense of there would have been no destruction. Only parliamentarians would have scampered the way they did, would have gone away, but everything else would have, I believe, would have been intact. So I do not myself fear demonstrations, because ever since my university days, I have learned that demonstrations are always peaceful until police come with brute force. Then there was the question about the gender overrepresentation and the gender rule. I would like to say the gender rule applies either way. If in future there will be more women elected than men, the gender rule will still apply, because it says not more than 2/3 of elected people in both, in elective positions or appointed, not more than 2/3 should be of one gender. So if women are more than 2/3, it's unconstitutional. If men are more than 2/3, it's unconstitutional. And that's why parliament was declared unconstitutional. I do not think that having women reps is overrepresentation. Think of it this way, that the world is made of both genders, and it's almost 50-50. In Kenya, women are slightly more. It's like 50 point something or 51%. But if you take that it's 50-50, is it really representative when we have a parliament that is wholly made up of men? Without the women rep seats, the number of women in parliament would have been very little. But if we adopt the PR system, we would be able to correct that without overrepresentation. South Africa, just through the actions of only one political party, the ANC, achieved near gender parity. So these are things to consider. Daktari Onyango, you have asked how we can get fresh minds elected. Yes, fresh minds, and fresh minds could include good minds that were there before. But the way to do it, when you think of a country, it looks like mission impossible. But for me, I say we will change Kenya a county at a next person you will elect as your MCA, member of of county assembly. What if everybody did that in their ward? The result would be good representatives in that county. It would mean that we have already gotten leaders, credible leaders, leaders of integrity in that county. What if it happened in all the 47 counties? It would mean we have transformed Kenya. And when you are thinking of your MCA, think also of your member of parliament. Think of all the other seats, including the presidency. It is possible to transform this country if each one of us did something towards it. There was also a question about ODM being both government and opposition. A very untidy situation, and it's the same thing that happened during the Uhuru second term, when ODM was a very close friend, when the two handshake brothers, Raila and Uhuru, became cozy. It meant that the oversight literally died. So it is an untidy situation, and it is up to the parties represented in parliament. Now, Kenya doesn't have members of parliament. We are only at the county assemblies. Those who have members in parliament, it is up to them now to fashion themselves as the opposition. But outside of parliament, nothing stops all of us from standing in the gap and being the opposition. Even last time, Na Kenya didn't have members of parliament, but we were able to be a loud opposition voice, even in opposition to BBI. So we have to stand in the gap and do what we have to do. Now Kenya has already moved out of, given notice to move out of Azimio for the simple reason that instead of taking time to argue with each other, who should head this, who should head that, it is better to withdraw if the partners who have gone into government have not withdrawn willingly. Then instead of spending time, it is better, we found ourselves feeling that it is better to come out, concentrate on building ourselves, and think of alliances ahead. Unifying the movement, it's a good thing. And what can unify the movement more is focus on issues. And I believe where the Gen Z movement has reached, it has been unified, not by leadership, but by issues. We want accountability. We want transparency. We do not want wasteful spending. Issues, issue-based. And I think because we are at a very critical stage, I would suggest that we first unite around issues and values. And then finally, we will be able to even unite in seeking leadership. Henry, taxation on water. I would agree with you that water is life, and therefore it is the duty of the state to ensure that everybody gets water. But for bottled water for commercial purposes, there ought to be some form of taxation, and you've already provided the answer. Tax the plastic, not the water. I would agree with you, and that's something that should be debated and listened to. But our representatives have been acting with impunity, and the courts, to some extent, have aided them, because one court held that members of parliament were obliged to listen to the people, but they didn't have to act on it. I believe that is a totally wrong decision. If the framers of the Constitution did not want the voice of the people to matter, there would be no public participation. We have to make our voices count. And I salute the Gen Z for making the voices of the people count. I also do agree with Henry that enabling MSMEs is one way of creating jobs. Because if one small or medium enterprise has 2 to 10 people, even just 2 to 3 people, those are very many jobs. It will result in millions of jobs created. I also do agree that we need to have a plan for ourselves as a nation and as Africans, a plan of where we want to go and how to utilize our resources. The West and others and East have a plan for us, a plan on how to exploit our minerals, how to exploit our resources, including carbon credits, for them to sustain their development, not to sustain us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mama Martha, for the clarification and for answering of the questions. And I would like to say, I'm reading in the comment section, and I have to, at this point, thank Fabish very much for bringing in the question about what transpired in 2007. I underline that this has been extensively explained by Mama Martha, and she has also given a reference to where this can be read. So moving forward, if you have that question, still have that question, you will need to listen to the recording, and also please just invest more time to just read the report to see for yourself and understand what really transpired. Thank you so much. As we proceed, we're going to pick the next 4 sets of speakers. Do not forget to build the network by following each other. And now there is a Dr. Andrew, Mkenya Daima, Muok, and Ndegwa Wakili in that order. And I would like to encourage ladies to request for the mic so that we add them. Kijana wa Uhuru, kijana ya Uhuru, Mohammed, I oversaw you. I'll put you next. Sorry about that. Don't worry. Okay, so let's go in that order. Dr. Andrew Mkenya Daima. Then,
thank you.
Yes, 2 minutes each, please.
Thank you. I'll stick to my time allocated. Dr. Maubi here from Kitutu Chacha South constituency. Now, Senior Counsel Honorable Martha Karua, Article 37 alludes to there being freedom to picket and present petitions. Article 1 also vests power to exercise the Constitution to the people and their representatives. And of course, they exercise or they delegate this authority to their elected representatives. Now, while exercising this Article 37, the citizenry are often pushed away by the police by way of being tear-gassed, and even some of them actually being killed. So who bears the blame? Is it the police or government of the day? And what are the reliefs, if available, to the citizens during this blatant curtailment of the citizenry rights by the police? That is a question to to Senior Counsel Martha Karua. Number 2, the CJ Emeritus David Maraga gave an advisory regarding the 2/3 gender rule that had not been fulfilled. What is the role of the president now with regards to this particular advisory? Finally, Honorable Karua, I have learned recently, and I've had to speak about this, about your notice or your party's notice to withdraw from the Azimio coalition. Where does that leave the spirit of opposition fighting together to support or actually to be in line with the Gen Z's concerns that are being raised or that have been aired in the recent past? It is not, or is it not this an act of showing submission? I so respectfully submit. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll take the last question for Mama Martha. Actually, at the moment, there's no opposition in the country. The only opposition is the citizens on the streets. Let's be clear about that. So I think that question, I would just defer it because factually, there's no opposition in the country. So
I'd respectfully ask that you allow Honorable Martha Karua to answer that, because we're all aware that on record.
The session, Dr. Andrew, I'm leading the session,
right.
And that is the position. So let's go to Mkenya, then Mook.
Okay, thank you much. And let me just, by show of emoji, let me know that I'm being I'm audible. Okay, thank you. This is to you, Martha. Through the spaces that we've had for the last few days, and you'll excuse my ignorance if there are some things that I might not be having a proper understanding in terms of the law, considering I'm a software engineer, so I'm from the tech world, and everything I believe I'll be talking on behalf of most of the Kenyan Gen Zs. who probably have a little of no understanding of how most of the things work constitutionally. So these are some of the things I would want you to clarify for us. One of the thing, the biggest challenge that we are having with, especially as Gen Zs, is the political class. And me, speaking on my behalf, I feel like we don't need the current political class, and you, mother included. Let me give what I really mean by this. When we look at the problems that we are facing right now, all these people, you've worked with them, and from the look of the things, we've been able to we've been able to look at the auditors general reports, and we've realized we've been paying for every 100 bob is spent, 70 shillings goes to paying the debt. Then we've been able to establish we've been paying an existent debt of 6.1 trillion. And when we look at all these problems, where how far they are stemming, some of them are stemming from 2013. Let me put 2013 as a more of recent approach, whereby most of the and this is where the political class have been able to work together, especially you, mother, you've been able to work with Raila Odinga. And when we look at things like handshake and everything, we are realizing that in one way or the other, you've been able to benefit from this loot that, of these loans, in these loans that we've been paying. So one thing that I clearly want to understand, so if Kenyan Gen Zs and we push for, the whole political class being out, is there a possibility of us being able to default on loans that we can't be able to trace in the Kenyan books, because the auditors general reports, I think it's out to the public and everyone has access to it. So is there a way we can be able to default on loans that we've not, they cannot be accounted for? That is one thing. And the other thing, if as Kenyan Gen Zs, we match to, and I want you to really explain this clearly, if we match to State House, how will this impact in terms of the power vacuum that has been preached so much, in especially on spaces and in social media and everywhere else? So that's one thing I would really want you to explain to us constitutionally, so that we can know, how those dynamics exist. And the other thing is, in terms of the debt, is it constitutionally, can we be able to default on a debt that it can't be traced to the Kenyan projects and the money that never came to the country? All this I'm saying is the information that we've been able to access through Twitter Spaces, and people come in and us being able not to look at the auditors general reports and that. So that's one thing. And then this is the last question in my questions, is when we advocate for the whole political class to be out, you included. So how do you feel? What impact? What pushback? Because allow me to put you in the category of the political class. What sorry, just a second. What pushback are we likely to expect from the political class, and is it a wise move, or it's a move that is impossible? Those are that is what I would want you to address kindly.
Thank you so much, Kenya. And as she answers the questions, there's somebody who is actually answering already on the comment section by saying Martha Karua has not been in government since Kibaki era. So that, I think that responds to being part of the loot, but she will get a chance also to respond. Wakili, I see you open your mic. More kindly give me a chance to cue in Wakili. He's just texted me that he's heading on to a meeting, and then you're next. And then a reminder, when we began this space, we reminded that our speakers, when they come here, the personal attacks are not allowed. And at the same time, if you want to criticize actions, that's fine, but personal attacks not. And even those who are not in the space, we don't allow personal attacks on them because they're actually not here. Wakili, over to you.
Thank you very much. I salute Senior Counsel Martha Karua. And today's topic is quite interesting. It speaks to change the status quo. In my view, I have held a position that this is a revolution that is perpetual. Perpetual in the sense that there are those people who initiated the revolution. Some of them left, others are still with us. And it's a revolution that has been having various phases. For example, this revolution began with the clamor stage of Section 2A of the Constitution, which allowed us to have multi-party democracy, Multi-party democracy brought in President Kibaki. Fast forward, President Kibaki with his policy brought in the free education. Free education brought in or took in the Gen Zs to school as they are today. Free education, Kibaki also brought the new constitution, which brought in the section Article 37, which we are all now enjoying. What am I driving at? I am driving at that we will be very, very ungrateful for us to say that the revolution is wholly owned by the Gen Zs and the millennials. We must appreciate that there are some people who have been there before us, who have yielded this opportunity to us to be what we are today and to do what we're able to do. I would not perhaps be fair to senior counsel if I don't mention her as being one of those people who have been in the trenches and those individuals who have been out pushing for good governance and change. So my appeal is that even as we look at the question of the change of status quo, and perhaps addressing just the recent contributor, we would be very unfair to the earlier generations to condemn them of having just sat idolent and condemn them of having just watched things happen. The fact of the matter is they have done their contribution. They have just handed over the baton to us. So when we say that we now want to change the status quo, we must all understand that we are focusing at forming government. Because the revolution that we have engaged ourselves in is a revolution that we form government and form a government that will be premised on the principles enshrined under Article 10, that is good governance, the rule of law, integrity, transparency, accountability, social justice, equity, and all those particular principles. So in my view, we must be very calculated. Those that sold out, the sellouts to the revolutions must be changed. The sellouts must be replaced. Those people who have stayed put to the revolution and those people who have stayed focused to attaining good governance in this country cannot be, must be embraced. So that at the end of the day, we all go together as one. Remember the Constitution under Article 27 outlaws any form of discrimination, be it on age, be it on social status, be it on sex, be it on political orientation. It outlaws. And for us to be able to win this war, we must gather much more than we scatter. When we just say that this is a revolution that wants to begin a clean slate without realizing that people have have provided their bait, like people like Akina, Dr. Mutunga, people like Professor Kina Kibuda Kibwana, those are people that we must embrace to guide us in the manner in which we must remain within the four corners of the Constitution and yield this country to good governance. So I slightly differ with the with the submissions made therein earlier, and say that we embrace all and sundry as long as you identify with our cause. I would perhaps beg to rest my case as at that and listen and perhaps yield in to senior counsel to answer the questions. I am still available on space. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's have Mok go, and then she will answer the question. 2 minutes each.
Thank you, Marge. Thank you, co-hosts, and thank you, Martha, for joining the conversation, and thank you, the listeners. I have two quick questions. One question partly was addressed by Dr. Andrew, but just to add a little bit on it. That okay, now that Kenya is quitting the Azimio, can you give us the the exact next step? Are you joining the Gen Z in this fight, or what are your exact plans now that you quit the coalition that is now untenable to stay in? Another question is, there is this controversial oath that was taken by the Kikuyu community long time ago during the Senior Kenyatta. And this has been passed successfully from generation to generation. And now that we're dealing with the issue of changing the status quo, given chance, what are you going to do to correct this? Because this, to me, has been a mistake for a long time. How are you going to ensure that the next generation of the Kikuyu community embrace everyone, embrace every leadership as on theirs, no matter where the leader comes from? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mook. Let's have Deborah, so that at least we have a lady who has spoken in this space, and then Senior Counsel Martha is going to answer. Odera, I'll put you next with the next speakers. Yeah. Deborah, 2 minutes. Deborah, can you hear me? Okay, Deborah cannot hear me. So let's have Senior Counsel answer the questions. Mama Martha, are you able to hear me?
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
I had continued
Okay,
to.
no problem. Yeah.
Okay. Andrew Maubi asked about Article 37 and Article 1 and asked who is to blame when violence is unleashed on the Gen Z? Is it the police or the regime? Quickly, I would say it's both, because each police officer must act individually within the law. The regime, because of deploying police to do that which is unlawful. And I gave the example of the day of the 25th of June, but also every day that there has been a demonstration, including yesterday, you can see the police using excessive force. There's nothing wrong with demonstrators being in the CBD. They are unarmed. Carrying coffins is not an offense. Blowing whistles is not an offense, or carrying your phone. So both the regime and the individual police officers deployed out there and their commanders are to blame, and they should be held to account. And I know that people are going to go to court to get those police officers to be held to account. It is up to us collectively to hold the regime to account. Ruto actually validated, he affirmed the police on the day they murdered the young people. He has affirmed them every day, and they continue sending them out. Therefore, he has owned the violence that has been visited on Kenyans. The Kenya National Commission on Human Rights says 60 people dead, 60 missing. It means at the end of the day, we may count upwards of 100 or even 200. We don't know how many more bodies are going to be in that quarry or anywhere else. This is something we should take very seriously. When someone's right to life is taken away, we all feel threatened because you don't know when it will be you or somebody close to you. It's a matter we must take very seriously as Kenyans. Maraga's advisory on dissolving parliament because it's unconstitutional. Uhuru failed to do it. That doesn't mean it is right. Ruto has the obligation to do it. And I believe there are people who have gone to court to try and enforce that. My exiting Azimio is not submission. If you understood Azimio, you would then understand more the exiting. You have just seen us acting as principals together. You wouldn't know what goes on or how it is structured. But Azimio's Secretary General is Junet Mohammed, ODM. Chairman of the board, Wycliffe Oparanya, ODM. Party leader, Raila Odinga, ODM. Overall chairman, Uhuru Kenyatta, Jubilee. Now, in that kind of situation, when Azimio leadership, top leadership, is ODM heavy, and we have been seeking to restructure and have not managed to restructure since the elections ended, and ODM has a leg in government, I do not think, and the neck of NARC Kenya does not think, that we should take our time trying to reorganize something we have attempted to and have not succeeded in the last 2 years. We better concentrate, utilize time better, building our party. In any event, since the NADCO report of November last year, we have not participated much in Azimio matters because we rejected NADCO. Differences over that report and over how we conducted the talks emerged, and therefore we have not been too much on the inside. So we think it is best to be out and to build the party. That does not mean that on matters where we agree, we would not stand with our opposition brothers and work together with them. Mock, political class, yes, we belong to the political class. And I have belonged to the political class since I was first elected in 1992. Before then, I was active as a citizen before 30, seeking for multi-party. I can give the milestones that I have participated in bringing at every stage, and I don't think I'm done. And I don't think that the political class can be wholly excluded. We are Kenyans, and we too are entitled to participate in matters that affect us. But the electorate, as voters, you can exclude those you feel need to be excluded. Not being part of the political class does not make everyone suitable under Chapter 6. There are people who are not the political class and who are not suitable. And if you just blanket say it's the political class you are barring, you will end up getting unsuitable people coming into the political class. I think it is best to have a lens that applies Chapter 6 and look at those of us who have been in. If we have been part of the problem, not the solution, get us out. That is the work of a voter, to decide whom to give their vote and whom to withdraw the vote from. And I would encourage those who would want to know more about me. There is an interview I gave recently, a life story, Cleaning the Airwaves, CTA. You will find more about me. And my book is also just about to come out, my biography. What else did I want to say? Power vacuum. I don't think there can be a power vacuum. Even if government and parliament were to resign at the same time, meaning that the speaker is not available, the people of Kenya can get a constituent assembly. We have 47 counties, and it is possible to say, let each county bring so many to form a constituent assembly as a temporary caretaker. And that constituent assembly can also form a summit so that it is possible. And these are just my wild thoughts in the sense that it's not something we have done, just like we had not seen the power in Article 1 exercised. Now, about accountability, the Auditor General, Nancy Gathongo, in her latest report showed that 1 trillion, we had lost 1 trillion through mismanagement, outright theft, and corruption. This is just about the amount we need to pay our debts every year. It is possible to better manage ourselves and our debt if we were operating above board. And the question about whether we have to pay our debt, yes, any money borrowed with the approval of Parliament and which has been paid into the consolidated fund, we are liable to pay. That is what is called a sovereign debt. But there are other debts which can be voided. If a regime borrows a debt without the approval of Parliament, It happened during Uhuru. It's also happening under Ruto. And that money is spent abroad without reaching the consolidated fund. That is a debt that can be voided. Mozambique and Singapore have been able, through the international court and negotiations, to avoid certain debts. So, yes, it can be, but it takes quite some doing to get there. Ndegwa Njiru, I agree with your comments. The last question I was asked is, what next after NARC Kenya has left? We will continue building our party, working with all progressive forces, including the Gen Z. But like I said, Gen Z should be led, and Kenyans at this stage should concentrate not who is the leader, but on the values and the issues that we are tackling. And then there was the last question about the 1969 oath. I've actually talked about that oathing in passing because I didn't take oath, and I was in class 6. So it's through the eyes of a standard 6 person. There were 2 oaths. One oath, not to let their leadership go to the Luos. The second oath was by Kiambu people, not to let the flag cross the River Chania. So you can see even within the Mount Kenya, there was, people hiding behind an enclosure. I don't believe in oathing, in such oaths. That is why I was comfortable to be Raila's running mate. Otherwise, I would have been breaching the oath. And I don't think it's everybody who believes in the oath. Otherwise, Raila would not have gotten the highest number of votes he has ever gotten in Mount Kenya of 800 plus thousand. And I believe he got more if you count the diaspora. So I don't think that in the right thinking people, those oaths carry weight. What carried weight this time in Mount Kenya was propaganda that had been sold for so long. And that's why recently, because Mount Kenya was sort of like under lock and key, we had to bring people together for them to know, yes, they can come out and they can dissent, because as though dissent had been killed in that region. I think we have a duty, collective and individual again, in all the spaces we stand, to ensure that we all claim our agency as people, as communities, and that we stand together on issues. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senior Counsel Martha. Yes, and thanks for really answering to those questions intensively, and for bringing in also the diaspora voting, which I had forgotten about. I would like to highlight that Mama Martha was on the Azimio ticket, and the diaspora delivered a win to the Azimio. So that is something that really is notable. Although we had small numbers because our voting, is not yet implemented, we are going to make sure we follow up with that. But we could bring in more than 2 to 3 million voters in, registered voters. So we're working on that. But yes, we delivered, the diaspora delivered a win to Mama Martha and Raila Amolo Odinga. That's on record there. So guys, as we continue, remember that Mama Martha committed 2 hours. So that means we have only 30 minutes left, not unless she's generous enough to others more. Please confirm with me, and then we see how to queue in, because then the next people will just come in just to ask questions, and then we proceed.
I think you let me go after the half hour.
Okay. So that means that 15 minutes will be for questions. Just come in and ask your questions, and then we'll give the next 15 minutes for winding up. So Deborah has dropped again. This is crazy. She keeps dropping. So Hannah Ali Kijana, yeah. Yes, please.
Okay. Thank you. As Martha coming, my mother, thank you again for coming to our spaces that we've been longing to host you as a diaspora team, and also um, as a legal counsel, and also the Azimia leadership. But I want to. This is a question that is being asked from diaspora team. That you guys, diaspora team, the Azimio team, uh, the team really helped you. I know Maj was in the committee and everything, really worked hard and everything. Somebody is asking, what plan do you have with the diaspora as Azimio? And you particularly, being that you were the deputy president in the last election, did you take your time to even talk to diaspora team, or when were you planning that to come? Mike, that's a question that somebody is asking. It's just he just DM me, but I also would like to hear what Mother is
Well,
saying
that's
about
all right.
that.
She will combine that question with the questions, the set of questions she's asked. She's going to answer. So Hannah, Kijana wa Uhuru, Odera, and then Josephine, in that order. Please, probably then a minute each just for the questions so that we can have more questions here.
Thank you, Hillary.
I'm gonna take a go.
Marge. Yeah, thank you very much, Marge. To be honest, for me, I just wanted to
Can
come
anyone
up
hear
and
Hannah? Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
she's.
Okay.
I
yeah,
can
we
hear.
can hear her as well. So I think.
Once she's done, let me know.
Okay,
uh,
go ahead, Anna.
okay, touche. Marge, continue. No, I just wanted to actually say thank you to Mother Karua. And just give her my gratitude and say thank you. She's actually doing a lot, and thank you for giving us the time. That's all. Thank you.
She's done. She will just say thank you to
Okay.
Mother.
Okay, that's great.
All right.
Kijana.
Marge, excuse me, Marge.
Yes.
Can I make just a quick comment before Mother leaves? It's not even a question or anything.
No, Mkenya, we're gonna give you
Okay,
that,
sure.
but let Odera go. And let him go. I will give you that. Odera, go ahead.
Thank you, Marge and Hillary, for hosting the space, and thank you, Madam Karua, for gracing us. And I want to compliment you for remaining consistent, a quality which lacks in our political leaders. I have three questions, quick questions. The Treasury is a tool of control in the hands of the executive. And that's why Ruto keeps dishing money anyhow. How can we separate the Treasury from the executive? How can we make the Treasury independent of the executive's wishes? My second question is, you've said, and I quote, political class cannot be wholly excluded. Per adventure, the General Z picks you as a leader. What will be your way forward for what they're trying to achieve? And my third question is, what is your political party's policies for we in the diaspora? Thank you very much.
Thanks, Odera. Kijana Uhuru, a minute each for questions, and Kenya, then Henry and Josephine.
Okay, thank you much, and thank you everyone. I wanted to ask a question about the Article 91 of the Constitution on basic requirement for political parties, which state that every political party shall have a democratically elected governing body, and went ahead and said, we shall promote and practice democracy through regular, fair, and free elections within the party. So my question is, and I want to be specific to NAK Kenya, and I wanted to ask Mother Karua that if NAK Kenya are there to this guidance of Article 91 of the Constitution. The second thing is, and my second question is, and right now we really want, another political party which we get an alternative of the current regime and what we were having. So most of the political parties and their campaign is mostly based on the cost of living and what is going on in the country at that particular time. So I want to ask, if Gen Z, I included, will choose Kenya, what will be the long term and vision of Kenya for Kenya, and including the transforming Kenya from a low income country to maybe upper middle country, upper middle country, and the issues of free healthcare and education, such things. Because we are right now we are tired on, how they will bring the price of unga down and such things. Yeah.
Thank you. Over to Deborah now. Deborah, Kenya, and Henry, a minute each for a question.
Hello, everybody. Can
Loud
you hear
and
me?
clear.
Okay, great. Thank you, Martha, for joining, and also thank you, Marge and Hillary, for hosting this. The only thing I want to talk about is changing the status quo. How can we change the status quo of IEBC when it comes to presidential counting of votes? This thing is very personal to me because, as we all know, diaspora, we always take part in election. Somebody like me, I'm always in Kenya, being an observer, watching everything that goes on. Even the last election, I was in Bomas, sitting down, watching. We went to the polling stations. Everybody voted peacefully. When it comes to tallying, that's where the issue is. Now, my question to Martha is this: how can we change the status quo so that election is finished at the constituency? By the time they're announcing who has won that constituency, they also announce who has carried that constituency in terms of the presidential counting. Because a lot of rigging happens in Bomas. So how can we demolish Bomas and we take this election to the constituency level so that we know by the time Kenyans go to sleep, by the time they're announcing who the governors is, you know who has carried that county in terms of presidential votes, so that we don't have this long run 7 days, people are still counting things in Bomas. We should have been counted in the constituency. So how can we change this status quo from counting election tallying in Bomas and take it back to constituency? That's where people can be more accountable. They can count these votes while everybody is seeing, and they say, okay, in this constituency, this presidential candidate carried the day.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Deborah.
you.
Kenya, Henry, and then 6,000.
Okay. Mine was a quick comment, and one thing is messaging is something that we should be very clear on, and how we put our message out. I just wanted to make a comment on Gen Z's is not exclusive. It's not excluding everyone else. So I wanted.
Can I speak?
Hold on a little, Henry. Kenya is speaking. I think you can just not hear him. Yeah. Kindly wind up. Yes.
I can hear him. I can hear him.
Okay, fine. So I just wanted to say, like, we've changed how we are messaging. Gen Z right now, the Z stands for Generation Zote. So it is our burden as Kenyans. So Gen Z currently stands for Generation Zote. Please let it not be just about certain certain people. So it's Gen Z is Generation Zote za Kenya. Thank you.
Thanks, Henry.
Thank you for the chance, Matt. There's something I wanted to say as my opinion. Martha Karua has not folded her integrity so far as we know her. The one thing I wanted to ask her about na Kenya or her party, we know that Gen Zs are young. Is she willing to hold the Gen Zs by the hand, or is she even willing to adapt new policies in the party to accommodate the Gen Zs? Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Peter, and then Peter, Josephine, and then Sam. Peter Makori, can you hear me? Okay. Josephine?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear. Kindly proceed.
Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I want to allow me to call Mheshimiwa Martha Karua. I really appreciate her. She has been my role model. And anytime I want to face justice and reality, I always emulate her strength and the powers and her principles, because I've ever seen her march out as a cabinet secretary when she felt that she was being controlled on how she's supposed to run the ministry. And that always gives me a lot of strength. I have just talked about it in another group few minutes ago. What I want to ask you, Mheshimiwa, is that whoever is not against us is for us, and that you and other people have just been left. You were in the opposition. You have just been left. You have chosen even to walk out of the Azimio. Are you together with us, and can we work together with you? That's one question I would request you to answer me. Also, I would also want to ask, is there an opportunity in which we can use, because we have just seen the president now has gotten to the campaign mode, running up and about in the entire country, which we do, it's not acceptable. What can we do so that let him step down and we go back to campaign if we want to campaign, so that we can elect a leader whom we want or who can work for us? Is there any way we can do that? Because we really feel pressed and stressed.
Yeah.
And again, what do you think about the new insurance which is being brought in place instead of actually empowering the former NHIF, which has been there ever since in memory and have been of great beneficial to many Kenyans? Thank you so much, and may God bless you.
Thank you. So let's go to Petra, then 6,000, then Eunice, then Sam and Eunice. Please, a minute each for a question. And what we'll do, because there are still over 100 people requesting to speak, once senior counsel has finalized, because she'd committed really 2 hours, we can proceed for probably 30 minutes to 1 hour. Take the question. She will come in and listen to those questions and probably just respond via tweet. So we will be tagging her, because otherwise it's really unfair to let over 100 people go without speaking. So who was next?
Ni mimi.
Yes, endelea.
Okay, Mheshimiwa Martha, asante sana kwa kujiunga na sisi leo. My question comes very close to what you have addressed, but I simply wanted to seek a clarification on when you say that Kenyans can pick representatives from the 47 counties so that they form a constituent assembly which will determine the next steps of forming a government or determining how Kenya will be restructured. What would be the mode of doing that? How are we going to determine that? For example, I come from Kisii. How do we pick, for example, if we say 2 people, how are those to be determined? And number 2, because this question has been asked quite very many times, if the government were to resign today or pushed out by whatever means, and the speaker has gone, and somebody was arguing that we may not even need the judiciary. So how are we driving ourselves towards anarchy, or what would that look like? Just that is the clarification I wanted to make with you. Thank you.
Thank you
Hello.
so much. Yeah, Ben, just a
This
moment. You're gonna go. Yes.
is Ben Srikal, and I wanted to say to our very respected council that it is a moment in Kenya, like Barack Obama said when he went to Washington, that it is time that change comes to our politics, but change is really not going to come from our politicians. And I think if we can try to harmonize that and bring on board our politicians who've been people who we can emulate, and then also listen to our Gen Z and millennials. I have taken my own responsibility as a citizen of Kenya. And if you follow me on TikTok, Ben Srikal, I'm involving the population, because I've realized that the biggest problem we have in Kenya is civic education. And you can see the president right now is targeting the weak in mind and the poor people in the villages. They have
Yeah.
now.
Can you please land, Ben? Because actually you skipped the line. Just
Yes.
land, but we'll put you back in after she's gone. She's gonna listen
Please,
to
this is very important. This is very important. I'm asking.
Okay.
I'm asking.
Ben,
Yes.
you skipped the line. So when we tell you to be on time, you cannot tell us. You mean the other speakers are not important? Sam, Tom, and 6, and Eunice, we have only 4 minutes to go. So 4 minutes a minute each, so that senior counsel can have 10 minutes to at least finalize. Yeah. And after that, we'll bring you back in and you say more. Yeah.
So Marge, me, I'll go. May I have two concerns, and one concern comes from whereby some 2 hours ago I was having a conversation. I stay in Kiambu, so I was having a conversation with people based on whatever is happening in the country right now, and people or whatever they are saying is if the central region watakosa like wataachiliwa in the just concluded cabinet, Mkikuyu atainuka. So that is what I want Martha Karua to address. Secondly, I don't know whether this was addressed, but it's the issue of recycling of leaders. This has been a very, very big problem affecting Kenyans since independence, and it is happening because I saw somewhere Nuro Kanga say Oparanya has been in government for 25 years, and it is still, it keeps on happening, because that is where our problem is. The moment we do away with all that chaff, that is where we are going to get a new beginning. We cannot even have our own leaders right now to accommodate them in parliament, because they are going to be consumed with the same evil that is going on in that parliament, and they'll end up. And lastly, Martha Karua, I've seen a poster going on, Martha Karua for Attorney General, and that is H Hustler Nation Intelligence Bureau, some poster. So kindly you can address that.
Thank you. Sam and Eunice, and then we let senior counsel go.
Thank you very much, Marge. Mine is very a short one. First, allow me to thank Mama Martha Karua for the great inspiration that she gave Kenyans in 2022. That campaign was robust, the first credible female candidate in the presidential ticket. Although the dream was not achieved, but I think the fruits planted will grow one day. And that dream here, itawezekana siku moja. I'll ask Mama about, there's a clause in the Kenyan constitution, which is really like the silent enemy for the diaspora, that makes us ineligible to have state jobs and become state officers should we have citizenship of other countries where we live. And other than just dwelling on this diaspora vote, which I think is hubris, diaspora vote actually is very negligent. It is negligible, less than 10,000. My biggest concern is there a possibility you could mobilize to have Kenyans qualified abroad, can work in their countries, return to where they are, just like Indians and Jewish. Right now, Netanyahu is in Washington, D.C. She could be an American citizen, but they're very actively building their country. So that's my request, that Kenyans can be allowed to have it both ways. Secondly, is it not time we can go back to the Bomas Constitution and bring back the original parliamentary system where people can negotiate, consensus is built, rather than this kind of ukora of presidential system? You go to an election, then I drop you down, throw you down and throw you down the bus, as we have seen it. Can you help Kenyans to go back to the original Bomas Constitution? And finally, without discussing people, is it also possible now that we can divorce presidential election from legislative elections? As some lady also mentioned here, there's a lot of things going on about presidential. Can we have them separately, the gubernatorial elections and presidential and legislature? So that way we have some kind of continuity, and parliament does not have to be subject to the presidential whims and winds. Thank you very much, and for hosting us, Marge.
Thanks, Sam. Eunice, last question, and then
can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay. I want to thank Martha. She became an MP when I was in class 7. And as a little girl, I said, I want to be like Martha Karua when I grow up. I haven't become yet, but it's still a journey. Martha, once time you say that leaders are a reflection of the society. And as a business person, we also say that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And this is just to say that, and I want to ask, is it that we don't have enough laws? Or is it that our culture is eating the laws for breakfast, for lunch, for dinner, such that we don't know who we are anymore? So that is my question, number one. Number two is, what can we do about restoring, creating a culture that makes, punishes people who do the wrong things? Because somebody also said that if you're not corrupt, if you're not a thief, it's either you haven't got an opportunity, or it is too expensive to steal, or you have deeply ingrained, consciousness that makes you not steal. So the question is, what can we do, as much as we are discussing the law, the legal issue, what can we do to engrave or, embed these behaviors in us so that then we transform completely? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Winnie. And with that, I hand over the mic to Senior Counsel Martha Karua for answering the last set of questions and then also giving the closing remarks. Over to you.
Thank you. I hope I'll remember all. May I begin by thanking the diaspora for the support, tremendous support you extended to us during the 2022 campaign. I accompanied Raila to Washington in March of 2022, and we attended 2 events organized by the diaspora. And when we came back, some of you came here to campaign with us and have remained in touch. We may not have formally thanked you, but as you will recall, after the debacle at Bomas, we had the court case. And after that, hot on its heels, we started the mobilizing for to push the government to audit the elections from last year. So it is not that we are not grateful, it's just that everything has gone on too fast. Hassan Ali, thank you also for your welcome, and thank you. Odera, about separating treasury, or that treasury is a tool of control, how can we make it independent? An institution is as independent as the people who man it. Can you imagine that since 2010, the Electoral Commission is called Independent Electoral Commission? Has it been independent? In my view, it's been worse than the Kivoito Commission, because Kivoito, at least 202, was able to certify good elections. After that, we have not, even with the 2010 constitution, we've not had credible elections, although the body is called independent. So for Treasury, we have seen Treasury act in a manner that helped this country to grow the economy once again. Immediately Kibaki came in. Then we saw a decline when corruption reared its ugly head in the Kibaki government. So I would like to join that with the very last question, which is asking, how can we, I understood it to mean, how can we fight impunity? How can we make it expensive for people to indulge in corruption? And I think it's all about leadership. Leadership matters. If you have good leadership at the top, it affects every other office. And you saw during the first Kibaki era, we had not changed the constitution, but you saw members of public helping to apprehend or to force policemen to return bribes. You saw people queuing to pay taxes at the KRA. So it's all about leadership. Let us fix leadership, and let us make each individual, irrespective of their position, to be accountable. The higher the responsibility, the higher the bar of accountability, starting with the top leadership in the country. I would also, you asked again, Odera, about diaspora. For us in NARC Kenya, we would have a policy of inclusion. And inclusion for diaspora means having a person from diaspora appointed either to be a director of diaspora affairs or some other high office that deals with diaspora matters, because nobody can understand diaspora better than the diaspora itself. And recognizing the contribution of diaspora by ensuring that they also do participate in government and in other matters, affairs of the country. And there's nothing wrong even having a diaspora occupying an office as an ambassador. So it's a policy of inclusion. You asked about Article 91, basic requirements of political parties and whether NARC Kenya is compliant. Yes, NARC Kenya is compliant, largely, I would say largely, because we did our national elections in January 2022 when we had our annual delegates convention. We are going to have, we are going to have our national governing council where we hope to rebrand. We also hope to amend the constitution. And one of the things we are going to bring in the constitution is to put it in line with the country's constitution, that as the top leadership, we must have a sell-by date, that a clause saying that you cannot buy beyond this point. So be expecting that from NARC Kenya very soon. And I'm happy that my deputy, Kabala, is listening in on this conversation. I believe I'm the oldest NEC member in NARC Kenya. The rest are much younger. I have a young NEC. And the current acting secretary general is a millennial. Not exactly a Gen Z, but a millennial. Long-term plan for the party. We are social democrats, and Article 43 of the Constitution is very dear to us. So our last manifesto included universal health care, universal education, and prioritizing agriculture and other basic needs like water, all those. But in Kenya today, a government that follows the constitution is obligated by Article 43. Even if you'd call yourself capitalist, you'd still have to have a social market economy. Social in the sense that Article 43 brings in social welfare. And yes, NARC Kenya, since it's a party to serve the people, is willing to keep and always keeps reviewing its policies. When you become a member, you are welcome to come and inject new ideas into our policies. We are improving our website to be able to give you more information about us, to make it interactive so that some of these questions can also be answered real time online. Deborah, thank you because you always keep in touch and you have asked, and thank you for the work you did in the last elections and for encouraging us all the time. You asked about the IEBC and counting of votes. The law is very clear, the Constitution. Counting of votes takes place and ends at the polling station. Therefore, the votes of all the 6 candidates, the counting of those votes end at the polling station. The constituency level, those votes that have been counted at the polling station are aggregated and announced. And therefore, the final say on the presidential vote is not the county tallying station. It is each of the 290 constituencies. The IEBC has been disobeying the law consistently to facilitate room for rigging. There is no such a thing as the returning officer for the presidential elections. There are no elections at the tallying center, whether at Bomas or any other place. The votes count ends at the polling station, aggregation ends at the constituency, and therefore at the National Tallying Center is actually aggregating the 290 constituencies, a job that should not take us more than 1 hour. And since the average polling station has only 700 votes, no polling station should take more than 3, maximum 4 hours counting. So by the end of the night of polling, by midnight, the National Tallying Center should have all the votes in it. And by midnight of that day, people should know who the president-elect is. This delay of 7 days is to facilitate manipulation, and that's what has been happening. So we don't need new laws. We just need to enforce the law as it is. And I like it that you have raised that issue, Deborah, because it's an issue that has brought a lot of problems in this country. You've also asked about, I've been in elective politics for 13 years. This was elicited by the comment of Kenya Daima, and thank you for your compliment. I've been out of elective politics now for 13 years because I last was elected as a member of parliament in the term that ended in December 2012. I have not ceased to stand up for Kenyans. My voice has not diminished. And if you allow me bragging rights, my voice has even been louder than most elected persons who are earning salaries. So yes, I'm willing to work with all progressive Kenyans, including millennials, including Gen Zs, so that we get a better Kenya. Josephine, you asked whether I'm supportive of the Gen Z. Yes, I am. And as I've said, I'm also supportive of all progressive forces. Let's find a way to keep pressure on this regime to do what is right. Let's find ways of putting pressure so that they can hear the wish of the people for them to exit. How do governments in the West resign? How do individuals resign? We can do it. The Gen Zs have made us realize our agency again, and I know this can happen. We all have a duty to think individually and then together on how this can happen. The new insurance is a scam. You can see the person who was heading William Ruto's insurance agency is now the one to head this, the company that is going to control this new insurance scheme. And there will be gatekeepers who will determine who gets paid and at what. It actually diminishes access to health rather than makes it bigger. It's one of the things that are totally opaque and one which we must keep the pressure on. How do we choose representatives for a constituency assembly? Would it lead to anarchy? It is not something I can say I have thought through completely, but I was quickly thinking, how are the Gen Zs communicating? Even so that Ruto could pick it up, or Kenyans everywhere could keep it up, pick it up and act on it. How did they communicate with Ruto so that he recalls the Finance Act or sacks his cabinet? It was through social media. And I was imagining that if my home county is asked to bring 5 people, there would be debate among the Gen Z and among people, and a consensus would be arrived at. Especially if we begin not by the names, by discussing the criteria in Chapter 6. And if we are clear that if we are asking 6 people, we want, let me assume 10 so that I'm able to do the math quickly. If we want 10 people, then we say 6 are youth and 3 must be women, 3 men. And among them, Let them find a person, maybe with disability or a marginalized person. And then we say the other 4 are women, mature women, and men. They are going then to apply this criteria of Chapter 6, and they'll be able to get those people. If it is a constituency which has it's a county with 4 constituencies like Kirinyaga, they will have, in accordance with the constitution, locate those people within the 4 constituencies. It is clumsy because it's not something that is defined, but this is our time to think through those things so that tomorrow we might even want to have regulations on how to activate those sections. So your guess is as good as mine. And I do not believe that resigning of a government or running it out of town would necessarily bring anarchy. Our constitution is clear. The army remains in the barracks. The police continue policing. But everybody brought in politically, like the principal secretaries. When a regime goes, it goes with its entire complement. Anybody appointed politically comes to an end. And in the ministry, they are civil servants. The highest ranking civil servant will be the acting. But these are things to think through. Very quickly, why should we be recycling leaders? My answer is simple. It's not the number of years somebody has served. That's why you are seeing Bernie Sanders in the US, a very old man, or the 2 presidential candidates before Biden left were both over 70. So it's not the number of years. You can have a Gen Z who is as corrupt as they come, and an octogenarian who is upright. So let us apply the criteria given by the Constitution on good leadership, and let's get leadership, quality leadership. The problem is not whether one has served before. The problem is the quality of a leader. We have Gen Zs who are now in leadership, then right now, and millennials, and some of them have done so badly. Yet we have Gen Zs who have done this country proud, who have done Africa and the world proud, and who are being emulated because they are so patriotic, they are so focused, they are so informed, and they are so progressive. So it's not only about age, it is about the quality of leadership that we get. Ochola, dual citizenship. Yes, I know currently not eligible for state jobs. That's a question to discuss the next time we are going into review. For people who are natural citizens of this country, I think those who are born, it is a question whether it is possible, even if one acquires citizenship elsewhere, to allow such people to also be in leadership, or do we open it to any citizen? It's a question that ought to be discussed and not taken lightly, because the diaspora, wherever you are, irrespective of the citizenship you have acquired, you have continued to support this country. And it is also good to give opportunity for diaspora to serve. We are asking the Chinese to build our roads and railway. Yet out there, our diaspora are building great highways in America, in parts of Africa, in Europe, and many other great things that are being done by diasporas, professionals in all fields. I think it's a time we opened and we deliberately even went out to look for diaspora who can help us do certain things that are beneficial to the country. Can we have separate elections for presidential and also for the other elections? This again is something that should be looked into, as well as the issue I talked about first of proportional representation. Now, Eunice, my own handwriting, which I'm not able to read, but you have said, I said, leaders are a reflection of society. Yes. I remember when I became a member of parliament, opposition areas were electing leaders not based on money. I had no money to get elected. I was elected because of what I stood for and my manifesto, what I was telling the people I would do. So our people have not always been transactional and electing people because of what they give. But since 2007, our society has embraced money, transactional politics, and the leadership, the poor quality of leadership from that time is evident. So we need to have an open discussion with ourselves, and I'm hoping that the Gen Z will lead us into this also, that we must drop money politics and we must elect people on merit only. Like I said, that change will begin with your county and your ward. This is something we can do. Kenya is big, but if we band ourselves around our wards and our counties, it is possible to begin this conversation and to transform and to also mobilize our Gen Z and everybody, not only to pick the vote, but to participate in voting. We should also be able to mobilize ourselves to reject impunity and to recognize that leadership matters. And the type of leaders we choose, that is the type of life and country that we choose. No wonder then, 13 years later, we have not realized the dream of the Constitution. Largely, we now have an opportunity to do something about it. Let each one of us contribute. Nobody has a monopoly of ideas. I'll be richer for hearing you and hearing your ideas, and we all will enrich each other by discussing these things together. Thank you, and I would now beg leave.
Thank you so much, Senior Counsel Martha Karua. I see that Kip is raising his hand. I don't know if you can. Kip, can you hear me?
Madge, I also have one question for Mother before she leaves. Thank you.
No, but Abdi Mother has to leave. We're going to do 30 minutes of Q&A. That the questions that she can take later, but she has to leave for now. Keep just a minute, and then I close for her. She leaves, and then we continue. Abdi, it's okay. We'll take those questions here.
Thank you.
And also,
Keep, kindly proceed. I cannot hear Keep. Can somebody hear him? Okay, I cannot hear him. So let me just close by thanking Martha. Martha, thank you so much for coming to speak to us. That was a very good session. I loved it. And the questions were really organic and straight from the people. And yes, we are looking forward to hosting you again once things have settled, so that you can come over and share with us, the diaspora, more about what the NAC, party has in store for diaspora. So since you've extended by 35 by more minutes, I'll just let you go, and then we'll communicate again as we proceed to take questions for you for the next 30 minutes to 1 hour. Back to you.
Asanteni sana. Bless you all. And it was my pleasure.
Thanks
Thank
too,
you.
and sleep well. So now, guys, as you've seen, there's still over 100 people waiting. Keep, I added you to the mic, but I cannot hear you. Can you say something? I still cannot hear you. So guys, let's have the rest of the session run as a Q&A for Martha. You come in 2 minutes to ask the question. The questions will be noted, and then she's going to respond. And before that, let's continue building the network by following each other. Follow the host, the co-host, the speakers, look left and right and follow each other. So we go to Web. You dropped Web, Saleh, Maura, and then Alice and Sam Mwangi. 2 minutes each for questions. Salah, Web is not picking.
Yes, Maj, and thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for the space. Good evening, all. And tonight, I don't have so much to say or to ask. Probably in the next Q&A, I'll participate. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Web, can you hear us? What's your question for Martha?
Yes, mine was not actually a question initially, but I'll rephrase it like that. And my question that I would like extended to her is, we are working basically on a platform to prevent corruption before it happens. To what extent would she be willing to look at the solutions that we are putting together? We are a forum, and these solutions involve basically technology. Like we've seen, technology can solve a lot of problems where we monitor transactions, projects live, and the citizenry is involved. And the extent to that can be discussed later. But what, because I mean, we are trying to do the status quo change, and one of the ways is to prevent corruption before it happens. The forum that I'm in, we are working on that. We also be compiling the contributions that were given, because we hosted a transparency forum last week. And we also continue to invite people to kind of add to that, because before any technology is adopted or even proposed to the public, there needs to be really a lot of inclusive discussion. But this will be mostly focused on prevention of corruption, because as we know, with asset recovery, less than 20% success rate. So we gotta prevent it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We go to Alice and then Abdi and Rosaline in that order. 2 minutes, your question or comments for Mother.
Okay, I can go first, yeah?
Please proceed.
For me, thank you, Martha, for joining us on this space. My name is Alice Mwango. Mine is to ask you guys, how can we support the current education system? Many people are dropping out of uni due to lack of school fees, especially considering the current funding model, which means now unemployment is not going to be an issue, education is going to be an issue. How can we revive ourselves? Yeah.
Thank you so much, Alice. The question is noted. We go to Rosaline and then Abdi.
Thank you much for hosting the space, and thank you for the opportunity just to make a contribution. I'll appreciate the insights that we've received, especially in regard to pursuing constitutional means to, push for accountability. My question is, in light of the fiscal abuse and financial irresponsibility we've seen at large in the executive, what measures are there in the constitution to limit the, the fiscal right or ability of the executive? Because, for example, with the loan, or rather the debt situation, we've seen it going from 2 trillion to 11 trillion, and that's because the executive took over the right of parliament to borrow or to limit or govern how much is borrowed in the country. Then again, we've seen MPs vote for unconstitutional offices to retain their budgets instead of key areas like healthcare and education. So how can we rein in that power and bring it back to organizations like the Treasury and, with the relevant ones that can handle fiscal decisions in a proper way? Thank you.
Thanks, Rosaline. Abdi and then Maura.
Thank you much, and Hillary again. Can you hear me? Thank you for hosting this space again. You can hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
My question to Martha was regarding the appointment of the opposition MPs to the cabinet. Does the appointment of these opposition MPs to the cabinet violate the principle of separation of powers and checks and balance as outlined in the Constitution? Can the appointment of these opposition MPs to the cabinet be considered as establishing unlawful government under the current constitutional framework? What are the constitutional implications of appointing these oppositional MPs to executive positions, and how does this impact the role of the opposition in holding the government accountable. And that leads to my question. In this event, the opposition MPs are appointed to the cabinet. Can the people themselves assume the role of official opposition? And if so, what are the mechanism or legal framework that support this arrangement under the Kenyan constitution? That was one of the questions I had for Mother. The second question I had for Martha was the removal of the president through people-driven referendum. Is there any constitutional basis for the removal of a sitting president through a people-driven referendum under the 2010 constitution? What are the legal avenues available for initiating such process, if any? And how does the current constitution framework ensure accountability and provide mechanism of removal of a president if deemed necessary by the public? Thank you. Those were my two questions.
Thank you, Abdi. Let's go to Maura, then KD Lee, and then Tom.
Okay, thank you, Maj, for hosting the space and Hilary. I only have two questions. One for Mheshimiwa Mother Wangari Karua. One, how can we make sure that our parliament is completely independent of the executive as envisioned in the constitution? Because that is what is bringing problem in our country. That's the first question. The second question, since a government is minority employer, how can we make sure that there are good and conducive climate for investment in Kenya? Because all these people who are leaving universities and colleges needs employment. And number three, how will she make sure that she stamp out corruption? Because we are losing billions in corruption, and if we stamp, I'm sure that the amount of taxes we are paying as a country is going to come down. Thank you. Only those three. Thank you very much, Marjan Hilary.
Thanks so much, Maura. I think it was KD Lee, Tom, and then Matthew. Then we go to Hannah. KD? Can somebody else hear him? I cannot hear him. Hilary, can you hear him?
We can't hear him.
Okay, Tom? Tom Boya?
Well, thank you. I hope I'm audible. Thank you, Maj, and I greet you all Kenyans in the name of your ancestors. So I request to be given at least 3 or 4 minutes. The reason is this. As we are discussing changing the status quo, I wish you would have started by defining what is the status quo. I believe that Kenya is sick. The sickness is theft of public fund. Sickness is poverty, slavery. When you go for treatment, a focus is always based on treating the cause. More often, we find ourselves discussing the symptoms. And in my perspective, until we discuss the root cause of the problem, then we are wasting time and we will not get everything right. This is so deep, this is so extreme. I wish someone who is more experienced like Martha would have been open enough to discuss the detailed issues on the root. Number one, colonialism, foreign interference, religion, cosmetic electoral cycle, democracy, and capitalism. When I just go ahead to illustrate a bit, this is evident.
So, Tom, can you please put those as questions? Because those questions are not placed onto her, so we cannot say she wouldn't have responded.
Well, my question is this. How do we address the root cause? It is deep. Okay. I see an example. It is happening in Niger, and people are silent. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tom. I just wanted to ensure that more people also speak. So that is a question she can answer, and I think she's very competent to answer that. No worries. She's going to listen in. Matthew, and then Hannah. Matthew Etabo? He cannot hear me. And Wakili, should you want to speak, just open your mic. I'll see it, and then you can chime in, especially on the legal matters. Over to you.
Yes. 1 minute. Ndegwa, please don't make noise. Thank you very much. There were some substantive questions that were put. One was how a referendum can be structured to remove a sitting president. Let me begin by saying that we all have in mind the provisions of Article 1 of the Constitution, which has created 2 levels of public or people's participation in governance. The first level is where people are electing their representatives, and the second level is where they are participating directly in that process. The thinking behind the creation of Article 1 with those 2 levels was that there may come a time when the elected individuals may betray the people. The thinking behind that provision was that we need to create some residual powers that are available to Kenyans so that if Parliament or the executives fails, neglects, or refuses to adhere to the people's wishes, norms, and aspirations, then the people can exercise their sovereignty directly. Then you have to connect that with 2 aspects. The first aspect is where the Constitution is creating the means upon which the people will participate in electing their leaders, and therefore they create a constitutional tool called election. Number 2, the Constitution also creates another tool called a referendum. Ordinarily, we have thought that referendums are only exclusive to questions of determining perhaps how many constituencies do you want to have, how many counties do you want to have, which do you want to do some review on the constitution. But we should also see a referendum as a means or as a constitutional tool of or tool where people can exercise their sovereign power under Article 1 in the event the delegated democracy fails. So the thinking behind the petition that we have taken to court is that the court is for that the High Court can pronounce itself that referendums are not exclusively meant to determine administrative matters, but they should also be it should also be a tool to be used and applied by the people in the event the delegated democracy failed. That is the thinking behind the petition that we have filed with Kibe Mungai and my colleagues in court. We want the High Court to pronounce itself that a president who has failed to adhere and to live to the people's expectations can be removed through parliament. Why are we going through a referendum means? We are going through the referendum means because the Constitution has created an impeachment tool, but you need to resort to parliament for you to impeach the president. The Constitution has also created a tool where a president can be removed through parliament on ground of incapacity. But again, you have to go through parliament. Kenyans are sick of this parliament. The parliament has failed to live to the expectation of Kenyans, and that is why we are resorting to the most rare means and the route least followed to ensure that we have other means where people can remove the president through constitutional mechanisms. That is the thinking behind the constitutional petition that we have filed in court. Had it not been for the failure of parliament, would have urged parliament to initiate an impeachment motion. But because parliament has been captured by the executive, we are therefore thinking and making a case before court that parliament has negated on its duties, parliament has neglected its function, they have attempted to fuse their function with the function of executive, and therefore it's not possessed with the necessary constitutional tool to undertake the process of removing the president, and we therefore want the people to make that determination. On the question of ODM joining government, there is nothing as unconstitutional as that. Why? Because our constitution has created parliament, and parliament has been created to have 2 levels or 2 sides. The minority side and the majority side. Remember, the majority side and the minority side is a constitutional dictate and a constitutional provision determined through an election. It therefore presupposes that the only thing that can alter that preposition is a subsequent election. But you are seeing William Ruto crossing over to the minority side, co-opting individuals of the minority, and therefore polarizing parliament, therefore obliterating parliament, changing the structure of parliament. There is no contemplation of the constitution that there could be a circumstances or a scenario where the minority join hands with the majority. There is no provision in the constitution. There is no one single article that says that at a particular time, the party in government can form a government of national unity. It's only the people of the Republic of Kenya who can make that determination. But William Ruto seems to have usurped all the powers that are the residual powers left for Kenyans, conferred himself the authority that is only vested with Kenyans, and decided that the majority should then merge or collaborate with the minority. Let me ask you one question, and I leave it for the people to ponder. What will happen to the people who are represented by Opiyo Wandayi? What will happen to the special interest group represented by John Badi? You cannot do this without involving the people. Number two, Mr. Opiyo Wandayi, or Honorable Opiyo Wandayi, is the leader of minority in parliament. It is not perceived that parliament can sit to vet the new cabinet secretaries when we have a vacuum for the seat of the leader of minority. Because that will not be a parliament that is fully constituted. And also remember that Opiyo Wandayi cannot appear before the vetting committee while he's still holding his position of MP. He has to relinquish that position. It therefore follows that relinquishing that position, he will be relinquishing the position of the member of parliament and the position that he holds for Azimio in parliament. It therefore follows, consequently, that parliament will therefore not be fully constituted for it to undertake the process of even vetting. Because there is no scenario that is contemplated by the Constitution that Parliament will operate when one wing of Parliament is not fully constituted. And that's why we are saying that William Ruto has taken it upon himself for the few remaining days that he'll be in office to mutilate the Constitution and abrogate the Constitution. And if there is anything that we are called upon to do, even under Article 3 of the Constitution, is to defend this Constitution from being violated, to defend the Constitution from being defiled by those people who never believed in it. Can Opiyo Wandayi cross over to government without a resolution being made by the constituent parties in Azimio? Remember, Azimio, under the Political Parties Act, is a coalition political party. It has its constituent political parties who must resolve through the National Delegate Conference that we have agreed that one of our constituent parties can cross over and join hands with the government. That has not taken place. It therefore means that they have fully usurped the powers of all the members of the constituent parties. And that's why we are saying this is an illegality and a stinking illegality that Mr. William Ruto and his cabals have decided to undertake. To that effect, as we speak, I am preparing a petition again for the Constitutional Court to make that determination, whether or not the minority can cross over to join the majority in government, and what will happen to parliament at that particular time. Let us also look at the capacity of Mr. Joho and Mr. Paranya. Are they not leaders of political parties? Is their party not a member of the Azimio? Is Azimio not the minority in parliament? Can they therefore also join hands with the government when their political party has a position in parliament of the minority? All this, in my view, is a serious, stinking, unconstitutional illegalities that needs to be stopped ASP. Thank you much. Thank you everybody for listening to me. I'll still remain on call for purpose of any clarification.
Thank you
Thank you.
so much. So as we continue, thank you, Wakili. As we continue, the questions for Martha, each speaker has 2 minutes. If you have a question for Martha, pose it. And then if there are legal questions that still needs clarification, Wakili is very kind to clarify for us. Dr. Kasim, take a go.
Thank you, Marge. I hope I'm loud and clear.
Yes, you are.
Okay, I have a question on Wakili. When Ruto was appointed the last 10 cabinet secretaries, I heard him say that is directly the justice and something during demonstration. So I was left wondering how is justice only the league of demonstrations which being demonstrations, which is their right. Why are they arrested? So according to the president, they have been arrested legally and there's a favor he is doing to them. Then number two, a question I've been asking this was, but I've not got a response. Most of them are people above 18 years. Most of them have ID cards, but a number of them are not willing to register as voters because of the kind of system we have. But they will be willing to register if we had a better way of managing our elections. If we are to amend the constitution, my biggest question has been, why is there a clause that for us to amend our constitution, it has to be signed by registered voters? Why should we limit Kenyans above 18 years from participating in amending the constitution? Yet they are the majority of the people who are really suffering. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's take 4 sets of speakers. Ben, you're next. Then Ogwek, I'm Smart, Abdi, and then Hannah.
Okay. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I only wanted to as in we've been involved in these talks a lot, and as the people, we are trying to come up with way forward, and we are only asking people, our senior people like Martha Karua, who we really respect, to be able to help us in coming with the way forward as Gen Zs and the millennials. We have an opportunity to kick out this government in the next 2 to 3 months after the IBC has been formed, by just kicking out the 200 or maybe 150 members of parliament who voted for yes. And these members of parliament that you can put into parliament can therefore do so many things with the parliamentary privileges and powers, even to change everything in this country. So how can her party and her herself as Martha Karua help us in terms of achieving this? Secondly, you can see that the president right now has run away from the urban people because he's realized that the billion lies that alikuwa ametenga cannot work anymore to the educated folks in Kenya and the diaspora. How can we have civic education in the villages that is now targeting with these lies? How can we then have civic education in those voting areas, so that we can inform our people to actually see through the lies that the president is trying to impose on them? And then lastly, if you go to my TikTok page, my TikTok account under the name Ben Serikal, you will find that I'm trying so much to come up with people that you can have civic education and inform our people on their voting rights, on the fact that they should not vote because of the handouts they're being given. How can the diaspora, because this is our home. I was in the diaspora in Canada, and I've come back home and I'm seeing so many things that we can replicate in these systems that work abroad. How can the diaspora and people like Martha Karua help us to continue with civic education? Because IBC does not conduct the civic education, and it is the mandated constitutionally body to conduct the civic education. How can we proceed with civic education so that the president can stop dividing the country into the uneducated and the rural folks against the educated and the urban communities? Thank you so much.
Thanks. And I see people writing on the comment section that they should follow each other. Yes, I would encourage that, because when you have a message that you need amplified, when you follow each other, that's when you're able to build more network, as you also are able to amplify those messages and are able to really also get the message that people are sharing out there. So now, allow me, I've added two ladies to the mic. Allow me to get them through, because we've had less ladies speaking. Carol and Rachel, in that order, and then you proceed with the next. 2 minutes each. Carlo, sorry. Carlo, I hope you're a lady. Rachel?
Hello, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I've just joined here, actually in Sweden, and I would like to really ask Martha Karua about her way forward, as her plans, because some of us are really kind of really, we are very, very passionate with the issues that are happening in Kenya, and are really, really interested in getting into like making changes and coming with our solutions and or suggestions, so to speak. But we don't know who to contact. If I should be sincere, I've been trying to write emails. I've been trying to inbox some of our leaders, but none of them is getting back. And if I have to be sincere, I even wrote to the first lady. I was like, I mean, we are here, we need to be heard of. And they promised to call me back or somebody to contact me. Nobody has done that. Of course, we are trying to get into this platform just to be heard, because we really think we can come with one or two suggestions that can help build our country or bring the changes that we really want to see in that country. Thank you.
Thank you so much for dialing in from Sweden. Like we said, we're doing, I think we're going to end at the top of the hour while taking questions for Mother. She has been here for 2 hours with us, and she will be listening and responding. I see Professor Kivuta Kibwana. Thanks for coming, and feel free to pick the mic. I know it's late, but I've sent you the mic. Feel free to speak, to pick it. So let's proceed that way. And thanks to everyone who's still on. I think we're going to the third hour, and as you can hear, it's getting late from this end also. So let's go to Carlo. Carlo, are you able to speak now? Okay, then I'm Smart always, and then Hannah, in that order.
Thank you very much, Marge, for the opportunity. I can say that it's a wonderful discussion and a wonderful opportunity to also, just raise our queries. So I had two questions, and one of the questions
Ndegwa has dealt with it extensively, so he can actually answer the second question. But just because before I go to the second question, while he was answering the question, I mean, I was agreeing with him. I was there nodding with the response that he gave until when he got to the point where he said, where I had the two words mutilate and abrogate. And the next thing he said is that he's going to petition the Constitutional Court. So I was left wondering whether, excuse me, whether what he said that there is nothing against the law in for the president, that the president, I mean, there was nothing wrong that he did in appointing the opposition members into his cabinet. But then again, he still came and said that what the president has done was to mutilate and abrogate the constitution, and hence is going to petition. So I would like just to clarify whether what the president has done was right or wrong. And my second question in regards to that was, from the moral point of view, working with with the regime, with the government that seems to be not doing the right thing, in the sense that of there's a lot of corruption in it. There's a lot of corruption going on. How would it appear now to the people appointed and basically the opposition come 2027? Can the failures of this current regime be ascribed or apportioned to the opposition? And probably could this be what the president is trying to achieve at the end of the day? Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I think if he's ready, he can respond directly. Wakili?
Uh, thank you very much. And I would really wish to hear my uh, learned senior professor's view in this respect, of where the president crosses over to the minority and attempts to mutilate the composition of parliament. I would still reiterate what I said, smartly, that it's not, or there's no provision that requires the president to do so. When we wanted to do a government of national unity in 2007, we had to amend the constitution to create that clear provision, a provision that there will be a government of national unity. What President or what Mr. William Ruto is doing is to kill or to further kill the voice of parliament, is to alter the functions of parliament in terms of oversight. You ask yourself, the function of parliamentarians, be you in a minority or be you in the majority, is to offer oversight over the executive. All the KK constituent parties, they perceive themselves as though they are an extension of the executive. The only little voice that was remaining in the parliament was the voice from the minority. Now the minority has also been captured, and the majority of the MPs who are in ODM have been captured. We are fortunate we still have some MPs, those who are in Wiper, who have not crossed over. But the question is, the numerical strength of parliament to oppose that which is wrong has been mutilated by William Ruto's actions. And you'll bear me witness that Mr. William Ruto, being crafty and being what he is, has gone ahead to invite the minority so that nobody will question the character and the integrity of the persons proposed as CSs. Why? Because the ODMs will be saying, we have our person, let's close our eyes. The KK will be saying, we have our person, let's close our eyes. So at the end of the day, what we'll not have is an accountable parliament, is a parliament that is responsive to the people, is a parliament that is representing the people, knowing very well that one of the core functions of parliament is to represent the people. So I find ourselves in a very dicey position, very precarious one, very prejudicial one, that democracy is at the verge of dying. And that is why it is important for us now, the people, to offer effective oversight of a government. We need not be in parliament to ask government to be accountable. Remember Article 1 of the Article 10 of the Constitution provides for the values and principles of governance. And it further says that that article bind every state organ, every state officer, public officer, and every person, including the people listening to me this evening, including those who are not in parliament, both the elected and non-elected citizens. We have a duty to hold the government to account and exercise an alternative voice of reason that is calling for accountability, that is calling for transparency, that is calling for good governance, that is calling for the observation and the implementation of the rule of law. And that is why it is so wrong for Mr. William Ruto to start agents to kill those individuals who are offering this alternative voice. Because Article 37 is a tool of holding government to account. When government says that we cannot exercise that right or that freedom under Article 10, Article 37, of the alternative way of holding government to account, what William is telling us is that he wants to kill our voice of reason. He wants to kill our ability to hold government to account. And finally, I am pushing for the idea where everybody who has been arrested as a result of exercising his freedom or her freedom under Article 37 should not be referred to as the arrested person, should not be referred to as an accused person. We need to start referring to them as political prisoners. Those who have been mutilated by William Ruto's agents, killed, maimed, and abducted, we must start referring to them as political, they are being persecuted politically. Why? Because when we use the terminology political prisoners, it changes the connotation and changes the structure of those individuals. And it changes the perception, the way we view them. You know, when you say somebody is an accused person, you're saying that somebody has committed a crime and therefore he has been charged before the court of law for an offense. And nobody will interfere with you if the law is taking its course. But if we say that you are political prisoners and that you are being persecuted for holding a contra view to what perhaps the minority may be holding, because I believe William is leading the minority, then even in the international arenas, and I beg to be advised by them that are in the diaspora, will also change. The perception of the perception will also change. So I would urge that we start referring to these individuals as political prisoners, and we start the clamor for the release of the political prisoners. Just like though it happened during the time of Koiyo Amwere. You remember the mother to Koiyo Amwere, they went to Freedom Corner. I think also Wangari Maathai also accompanied them, and a litany of so many other revolutionaries. They went there not to release not to clamor for the release of Koiyo Amwere as an accused person, noting that he had been accused of sedition and treason and all those things, but the release of a political prisoner. It had a different connotation and it has a different view in the international perceptions. Thank you much. Thank you everybody for listening to me. Perhaps you might want to invite a professor to weigh in on my submissions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Prof is already on the mic. Professor, over to you, and thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much, Marge. Can you hear me? Because I've been having some problems with my gadget.
Loud and clear.
Yes, I'm also happy to have listened a bit to Martha because I had some other engagements, prior engagements. And I think very interesting conversation. And thank you for hosting, and thank you for the diaspora really being so engaged in terms of the unfolding situation in our country. And thank you, Ndegwa, for that passionate exposition of the legal, political situation. In my youth, I was a teacher to Martha at the university, and it is a lady I really respect. And so I'm happy, Marge, that you are able to have a conversation with her for our, progressive attitude, our fight against corruption, and so on and so forth. But you listen to her, and you are better judges of Martha from that conversation and from previous engagement. I really wanted just to listen. I didn't want to kind of answer questions that will be forwarded to Martha, but let me just weigh on probably 2-3 things. What has happened between ODM and the KKA, Kenya Kwanza Alliance, is like what happened between Kano and Kadu after independence. Immediately after independence, they came together, and as a result, for a long time, there was no opposition to speak about until 1966 to 69, when there was KPU, and of course that was proscribed. And subsequently, 82, we became a one-party state by law, and we had to wait until 1991 for a reversal of that. So that most of our history before 2002 was a history of a one-party state. So that is a very worrying trend, given that especially ODM was like the main opposition party. But I think what concerns one is the party leader of ODM has said that whoever was appointed was not authorized by ODM, and I think by extension not Azimio. So it would mean that the 4 people were appointed from ODM approached the president on their own and got appointed. And so there is no coalition agreement between ODM and UDA, or even the KK alliance, or there is no coalition agreement between KKA and Azimio, because we have seen that Azimio is still intact, minus Martha saying that she has exited through NARC Kenya. And I because I didn't, I was not here early in the space, so that I could hear explain what that means for the party, for ourselves, and for Azimio. But the thing really which is worrying legally, politically, is if individuals from your party on their own, when your party has been in opposition and your coalition has been in opposition, if they go to the ruling party and are appointed in government without your authority, that should actually attract a disciplinary situation. And it is not legally right, because it's like they have actually left your party, and that requires clarification in how are they going to the government side without being sent by their political party or the coalition. Of course, it would be different if ODM exits Azimio and now formally gets into a coalition with KKA. So that now would justify that they have formed a new coalition after exiting from Azimio, after giving notice like Mother has done. And so they are right to get into a coalition with KKA, and also therefore to serve in the government, so that there is a common government. So that, strictly speaking, the in law, the government now, the fact that of these four people going into the government, you can't call it a government of national unity, because structurally and legally and even politically, their entry into this government is not clear, for reasons that I have stated, and I think also Ndegwa has stated. So there is clarity there, because really it's not fair for a leader of a political party to say, my four guys have gone into government and I don't know how they have gone there, and they have not been given permission to go there. And even the Secretary General of the party says that they have not been given permission by anybody, and there are no consequences from the party of origin. Then the other point that I wanted to speak on is the battleground as we go to 2027 is really going to be in the rural areas, because usually, even when the opposition takes over the urban areas, incumbent regimes focus on the rural areas because of, the fact of this negative ethnicity and some illiteracy, political illiteracy, and all that kind of stuff. So there must be pervasive civic political education in those rural areas, and even among the youth Gen Zs in the rural areas. And if that does not occur, then the kind of changes that people think are necessary will be delayed. And that is why I think the professionals, the youth, the diaspora, the faith sector, there has to be this combined force to be able to now do that pervasive civic education and structures, getting the constitution even translated into, local languages, and even if it's summaries of it, so that happens. And of course, if one can recruit the teachers who are everywhere in the rural areas, if it's possible to get those involved, then again, that would really be a major thing. And I in another forum, I made the point that the youth are very the Christian youth are very angry that the church, especially church leadership, some of the church leadership let them down, and the church leaders, are saying that they will change and all that kind of stuff. And what actually the youth have done, the Christian youth, they may have made it very difficult for politicians to use the church in 2027, and that can be a bonus, and maybe that is something to be worked on, so that there isn't a reversal of that reality. So I appreciate much that you continue from abroad to really be very present within Kenya, and we need to support the Gen Zs, to support the millennials, to support these young people, so that we can change this beautiful country, so that whoever is in leadership knows that they have to be in leadership, being accountable, caring for everybody, following the constitution, knowing everybody counts, and there is transparency and accountability. That's the Kenya that we must create, so that we don't slide back like South Africa is doing, like some of these other countries. This is a great country. We must be great and also help the rest of Africa to do better. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Prof, for coming on to share with us your wisdom and for also staying up this late. We really appreciate that. And yes, we look further to more engagements with you. Having said that, we are ending at the top of the hour. So unfortunately, because we still have so many people requesting for the mic, unfortunately, we're not going to add any other speaker to the panel. We apologize for that. But we would like the ones who are already on the panel to channel their questions to Martha, as we agreed she's going to listen in to the last 1 hour and respond to those questions. And those who do not have did not have a chance to speak, we have noted you. We're going to give you the chance next time we host a space. Owek, Truth, Geoffrey, Onsando, and then Abdi and Hannah in that order. 2 minutes each. Geoffrey?
Yes, hello. Thank you so much, Raf, for the opportunity. I just wanted to echo what my former governor, Professor Kifuza Kebwana, has just said. It would have been so bad if it would have been better if these guys from ODM were to move to Kenya Kwanza if they had left the Azimio. You know, once they have moved to Kenya Kwanza regime, when they are under Azimio, then that sounds so so bad to the other members of the Azimio and might to some extent attract some kind of punishment. So I agree with what my governor just
Thank
said.
you so
Thank you.
much. May we concentrate the last minutes on 2 questions for Martha? If somebody doesn't have them, then probably they can give a chance to another. A Truth? Onsando? Abdi?
Thank you much again. It's just thank you again. It's a follow-up to question for Advocate Ndegwa. Thank you, my friend Ndegwa. And I think I'll get for the brilliant response to the people-driven referendum. My follow-up question is that given the representatives, the MPs are elected to exercise power on behalf of the people with delegated authority and can be recalled if they can be recalled if they don't meet the obligation. Do we have to go through the recall route before initiating a people-driven referendum? That's my first follow-up question. Additionally, also what I want to say is the appointment of the opposition to the cabinet not only undermines the principles of democracy, but also creating potentially unlawful government, as I said. The ODM party distances itself from this. If the minority party crosses over to the government, and does this compromise their role as opposition? And here the question comes, who is the next official opposition? Can the courts pronounce themselves on these matters? That is the other thing. Finally, I want to talk about judicial independence. How can you safeguard the independence of the judiciary from pressure and interference? And how can we strengthen mechanism protecting the judges and the judicial officers who might face threats or intimidation due to their ruling in regard to this matter? Final take is this for me now. I think the AG is the legal advisor to the government. There are situations where the Attorney General might not be consulted, or he or she provides politically motivated advice to align with the president or executive decision, resulting into errors in law. Can the law society that you belong to step in to provide pro bono advice to the president? Additionally, could the LSK formalize an amendment to this advisory role, ensuring the president receives impartial legal advice, given the potential for judicial compromise? How can the LSK ensure its advisory role is effectively utilized to protect public interest? We know we go to courts, we always run to courts, and we know the long legal process. And thank you also for representing us in Wajir Governor petition, Ndegwa. Thanks again.
Thanks, Abdi. I'm confused a little bit about the LSK providing pro bono services when we have an attorney general, but the legal experts are going to respond to that. Hannah? Hannah, can you hear me? Okay, then let's go to expert Linda Katiba, the hunter, manager, and Pius, and then we have Wakili Ndegwa and Professor Kivuta bring in their closing remarks. Expert, what? Yeah.
Thank you, Marge, for this opportunity. Mine is just a very simple question, and my question is it possible that we can give the Gen Z's original idea, which was completely outside the constitution itself, and also the legality of the whole revolution? Because I think it's good for us to think correctly that we can do the Gen Z's can actually get this thing done constitutionally, but I think that's where the mistake is happening. I think this is something that you cannot expect the sitting president to allow himself to lose his presidency through a constitutional means. He's not going to allow it. So the question is, can we support the Gen Zs and encourage them to consider the original strategy of not looking at this constitution and not looking at the legality framework so that they can be able to accomplish their mission? Because I think Kenya is rotten to the core, and there's no way out that the current constitution as it is set up is going to clean up Kenya. As long as the judiciary remains conflicted and compromised, we should not expect radical changes in Kenya. We have to have a clean reset. And I think that's what the original intention and the original desire of the Gen Zs was. All this noise that is coming up, all this expert advice is good, but let it all come after they have already succeeded on the initial mission of removing the current system completely out of place. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I would not want to speak for Gen Zs like that in their absence, because my understanding of what they are doing is still constitutional, and they're pegging it to the Article 1 of the Constitution. We also clearly understood that the Article 1 of the Constitution is not specific on how this can be done. And that is the reason why Wakili Ndegwa and other colleagues are going to court to try to see if this is going to be done through a referendum. So whereas we call for change and we want to call for change, we also want to advise that we need to stay within the Constitution. Because if we don't stay within the Constitution, we're allowing other people also to come and attack our democracy. That is not what we want. But the legal experts are going to also chime in on that in their closing remarks. Liz, and then Linda Katiba.
Hello,
Good evening,
Marge. Can
everybody.
you hear me? Hello.
Yes, Liz, go, and then Linda Katiba will take the mic here.
Hi, Marge. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak again. And also grateful to Mama Martha Karua for addressing us this evening. I like what she said about corruption, and when she said we can have a Gen Z who is corrupt and an octogenarian who is upright. And on that note, I just wanted to ask her a question in absentia, if it will get to her. What are some of the organizations or platforms that can be created to empower people who are young to have opportunities to learn about good governance, principles of good governance, good leadership, accountability, and honesty. Because we know leadership is all about good governance, right? But if people do not get opportunities to learn this, we just end up inheriting. It becomes like generational, right? What we know is what younger people will inherit. So I would really like to hear from Martha and even our senior Kivuta Kibwana on what are some of the programs that can be put in place to empower the young people, so that as we age out and young people take leadership positions, they come up with they come in with ideologies that will not hinder good leadership, that principles that we will have good governance. They'll bring accountability, because this thing is mental, right? It's a
Yeah.
mental shift.
Yeah.
If we do not have these things learned at a younger age, we will keep recycling bad ideas, bad leadership, and all these evils that we see in our society. So that's one thing that I really wanted to hear Martha and all the senior councils on the line. Finally, this thing, I said it on another space, and I'm not sure if I said it here, but we need to make political positions less lucrative and wealth creating opportunities. We need to change our thinking. And I don't know if it's about having SRC being involved in reviewing the salaries for these people, so that a political position is a servanthood position. It's not something that people look up to, that once they get there, they can say, Mini meomoka, with my generation, I will never see poverty. Let us see people going there to have these positions as servant leaders. And so maybe involving SRC, having parliament bills, or having a referendum to review these political position salaries, so that people don't go there with the mindset that mimi naenda kukua tajiri, or I'm going to get out of poverty, but people go take up these positions with the heart to serve people, bringing good governance, bringing good leadership. So those are some of the ideas or questions that I have. If Professor can answer, if Martha can answer on the timeline, I really appreciate it. Thank you, Marge, for this
Thank you.
space.
Thank you. Pius, no, Linda Katiba, Pius, and manager, it take at least 1.5 minutes. I'm sorry, because you want to end before midnight Kenya. It's too late. Linda Katiba.
Good evening, everybody, and I hope you can hear me.
Loud and clear.
Thank you very much. It is an honor and a privilege to be given a chance to speak to this forum. I recognize all the persons who are participating. I particularly recognize Professor Kivutha Kibwana. He was my teacher at Parklands campus, University of Nairobi, the law campus. And it is because of the foundations that he laid when I was a first year student, which I believe have served me in good stead. So, Professor Kibwana, asante sana. Concerns have been raised about various issues, about the crisis that we are going through as a country, primarily because we have persons in positions of leadership who do not respect the Constitution of Kenya. And we have said that enough is enough. We are not going to put up with it anymore. And we have decided to act within the Constitution to change the situation. Speaking specifically with regards to the nominations for appointment of persons by William Ruto for approval by the National Assembly to be members of his cabinet, views have been expressed, including by Wakili Ndegwa, about the unconstitutionality of many of those names, not least the nomination of members of the opposition. Kenya is decreed to be a multi-party democratic state, and for a multi-party democratic state to exist, there has to be political parties of different ideologies which try to persuade voters to vote for them at the elections. The winning party forms the government, the losing party forms the opposition. The place of the opposition is recognized in the Constitution. Article 108 is the one, for example, that provides for the leadership in the House or in Parliament, the leader of majority and leader of minority. So it is absolutely disrespectful of William Ruto to purport to nominate persons who are in opposition to join his cabinet. In that respect, I would highly encourage everybody in this space to contest those nominations. The National Assembly is going to be hearing or vetting those candidates. The vetting is taking place between the 1st of August and the 4th of August. There is currently a call for public participation for people to submit statements contesting any of those persons who have been nominated. The contestation could be about the process of nomination, or it could be about the personal integrity and character of
Uh,
individual members.
Linda Katiba, what you're saying is extremely important, but would you put it down in a tweet? Because actually, we were assigned 2 minutes each, and for us to even call on people to align to the constitution, we also have to align to the simple regulations while we are interacting.
That
You're about 3 minutes in. Do take the last 30 seconds to land, and then you can tell us that in a tweet. We've read about it, but also just as a summary and a reminder, it's a good thing.
okay,
So just
Linda.
yeah.
So quickly, I have prepared a template that people can adopt if they wish. It is pinned on my on my timeline on my TL. I would encourage everybody to have a look at it and consider putting in the statements. Please be aware it has to be in by 5 p.m. Kenyan time, 31st of July and 1st of August. I would suggest people try and get in before then. Thank you very much, and let us keep up
Yeah.
because we have to. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Now, manager and Pius, 1.5 minutes each, and then we close. Manager, Pius, okie dokie. Then we're gonna close. Wakili Ndegwa, take the mic. Then Professor, and then we close.
Thank you once again. I'm greatly humbled for this session. It has been quite engaging and quite educative. And we need to have many, many more of these because it's only through this kind of engagements that are beyond Mr. William Ruto's brutality. They are beyond Mr. William Ruto tear gas. They are beyond Mr. William Ruto's abductions. He will only abduct us, but he's not going to abduct our mind. And the revolution will be perpetuated by those who will remain behind. For one reason, that's a good cause and a justifiable cause that we have engaged ourselves in. It is very important that we rise up against the mutilation of our constitution, and dictators never ever saw themselves as dictators. It's a small bit of obliterating the constitution that they do, and we remain silent that crystallizes